Xavier smiled as he watched Master Shing retreat. The green-white heavenly flame did not scatter victoriously, but rather stayed in his hand and grew to a deeper, darker shade of green. The doctor had joined Xavier at his side to watch his back. Master Shing did not dare to play any tricks or try anything suspicious under the watchful eye of Xavier and his group. He continued withdrawing, looking around him. When he could not find any trace of the young Master Mo, his son, or the old alchemist Kai, his face fell. He rushed over to the spot where he had last seen Mo land. Mere moments later, he beheld the sight of Mo, crumpled in a bloody heap on the ground. "That obnoxious, miserable little monster girl really does not know how to hold back." He put his index and middle fingers to Mo's neck and was relieved to find anything resembling a pulse. A smile of relief formed on Master Shing's face. Xavier smiled back. He whistled, and the experts from both the Shao Gate and the Nanji Academy disentangled from their conflicts to join Xavier at his side. She, in particular, had flown over as quickly as he could to check on his brother. "Are you all right? You're not injured too seriously, are you? Yang would never let me hear the end of it if something would happen to you." Xavier shook his head and updated everyone in his company as to the goings-on. "The Black Emperor sect have said that they will no longer intervene. Han Feng and the other experts from the Demon Flame Valley are much less bothersome without their support and without their elders." She laughed until he noticed the fire lotus still burning brightly in his brother's hand. It was giving off a frightening level of energy. He forced himself to laugh again, but his nerves made it awkwardly quiet. "You really do have some incredible abilities if you can frighten off someone like Master Shing without even attacking him." He was worried that I would use the green-white heavenly flame to open him up to an attack from the doctor. Had it just been me and my green-white heavenly flame, without the doctor to back me up, I strongly suspect that he would have continued the fight. Their conversation was interrupted by the booming, echoing voice of Han Feng. "Master Shing, do not let this bastard trick you. Your actions today have already grievously offended him, and even if he does not enact harm on you for it today, he will definitely seek you out in the future to get his revenge. How will you deal with them alone, without us to help you?" Master Shing furrowed his brow. He was a shrewd man who knew that he could only hope to match the doctor's strength, and that taking Lily and Xavier into account, the whole group would certainly defeat him decisively. Defeat at their hands would almost certainly mean his death. Bearing all of this in mind, he took a breath, and then spoke calmly and quietly, only just loud enough for Han Feng to hear, and no more. "This is a business matter between myself and the rest of the Black Emperor sect, and you don't need to concern yourself with it since you're not part of our sect. I appreciate your earlier offer, and it is tempting in some ways, but your offer of protection requires that I would live to the point where I would need it, and I believe my odds of survival are better without you around. As such, I think it would be better if you were to fend for yourself." "That doesn't sound better at all." Han Feng's face turned red with anger. "Better for me, certainly, and that's all that matters, ultimately," Master Shing said, clearly unfazed. Han Feng's face twitched. "You old bastard!" he screamed as he withdrew from his battle. Silently, he cursed everyone. "Those damned cowards, and those damned useless fools, to abandon me, the most powerful alchemist in the Black Zone, and give up just so they don't have to fight this damned brat. Do they have any idea just how foolish they are? But it can't be helped. I have no choice but to flee. I can't fight all of them on my own, especially not if that lunatic considers to throw another bunch of merged heavenly flames at me. Xavier, don't get comfortable, and don't think that you will just get by holding on to the juice of enlightenment. I will not give up. Today, you have killed 3 elders from the Demon Flame Valley. The old demon of the Demon Flame Valley will not let you get away with such heinous crimes, and when he decides to punish you for those crimes, you will not be able to escape death yet again, even if you do still have the backing of the Nanji Academy." And with that, Han Feng retreated to a safe distance from both the First Elder Zun and Xavier, and their respective groups. He had said this loudly to reaffirm his points and the force behind them, and it had the additional side effect of laying out the events for all to hear. So wait, the juice of enlightenment is in Xavier's hands? The hidden onlookers kept whispering and murmuring. Xavier, which one is that? One of them asked. The chief of the Xiao Gate, I think. Someone else answered. Huh. Well, the juice of enlightenment is really potent and really powerful, and everyone wants it. So this Xavier must be pretty strong to be able to walk out of here with it as the winner. But surely not as strong as all of our elders combined, someone else speculated. That's a morbid equation to figure out. Xavier knit his brow upon hearing all of these strangers speculate about him, and how easy it would be to fight him so cavalierly. He turned to glare at Han Fang, who had clearly announced this information this loudly on purpose, to bring this awful level of attention to Xavier. That damned bastard. Does he think he can make everyone here fight me, so he does not have to? Xavier, we should leave quickly. First Elder Zun cajoled him. With all of these greedy, envious, bloodthirsty people following you, the only place anywhere near here that you would be remotely safe is in the Nanji Academy. You will be safe there, under the headmaster's protection. Xavier laughed bitterly. The headmaster? I spent a lot of time at the academy, and as far as I know, no one has seen the headmaster in years. Honestly, I sometimes wondered if he was made up to make the academy look more powerful. First Elder Zun gave Xavier his very best comforting smile and pat on the shoulder. I can assure you, Xavier, the headmaster is very real and very interested in the student's survival, especially if the student in question is as outstanding as you. Sooner or later, you will meet him, I am sure of it. However, it is true that the headmaster is an incredibly mysterious person. He loves to travel and does it a lot. Even I have not seen him in over a decade. Xavier's sleeves wiped the cold sweat off of his forehead as he shook his helpless head in disbelief. His eyes settled back on Han Fang as he deliberated what to do now. He made his decision a few moments later. All right, First Elder Zun, if you say you have met him, that is good enough for me. Let's head back to the academy then. I don't want to waste any more time here. I can sense that there are more and more people staring at us, and I'm not interested in fighting all of them. Let's leave. First Elder Zun breathed a sigh of relief when Xavier said he did not intend to attack Han Fang again. He himself had exchanged blows with Han Fang earlier that day, and he knew just how difficult and cunning that alchemist could be. The other experts, in response to Xavier's command, clustered together. They cautiously examined their surroundings to make sure they were safe and would remain so, and then departed. Xavier kept the green-white heavenly flame in his palm and brought it over his head, where it shone like a lamp. This hot light made most of the stronger onlookers reconsider their attack plans. However, there were some people who were bound and determined to get their hands on the juice of enlightenment by any means necessary, and they decided to quietly follow from a distance. As the people dispersed, Han Fang stood hovering in the sky, hidden by the high trees. His gaze was dark and cold as he saw the backs of Xavier's group flying away from him off into the distance. After a moment, a suction force surged from the unoccupied palm of his hand. Immediately, 3 corpses, namely the First Elder Fang and the 2 other elders who were with them for all of this, were suspended in flotation in front of him. Han Fang's eyes swept over the corpse of Fang Yan and the 2 elders. They were starting to go cold. He smiled wickedly. My goodness, Xavier. I do so hope you can bring the juice of enlightenment over to the Nanji Academy. It will be just one more reason for the old demon of the Demon Valley to join me. Lush green tree branches wove together above, sprouting from the tall trees that populated the forest, like an enormous spiderweb that covered the sky. Under the cover of these giant trees, the sunlight was having difficulty breaking through. A light ray passed through the gaps between the dense trees and transformed into a half-a-foot-wide light pillar. It shined on a large group of figures who were resting there, sat down with their legs crossed. There were around 15 to 16 figures in this group. All of them had intense, powerful Q energies, and were clearly far from being weaklings. A couple of people among them even had the power to obscure their Q energies, making it more difficult to detect their actual strengths. However, from the way their compatriots looked at them, it was clear that these people were the core of this group. A couple of distant explosions suddenly echoed through the quiet forest, followed by the sounds of bodies falling out of the sky and hitting the earth. Miserable cries rang out. However, the people seated on the ground did not move. They ignored the miserable cries that filled their ears. A couple of minutes later, a few figures flashed out of the dense forest, landing just outside it on some empty ground. They bowed to a black-robed young man and said, "Chief, those guys who were following us have been taken care of." The black-robed young man finally opened his tightly shut eyes upon hearing these words. "These fellows are really too reckless. First Elder, how much further until we arrive at the Naji Academy?" "If no more incidents happen, we might be able to reach it by the day after tomorrow." First Elder Zun, beside Xavier, smiled. "Fortunately, we have quite a number of people on our side, and the experts in that number are quite strong. Now that the faction who is tailing us has been taken care of, I think we will be fine." Xavier also smiled. "Good, it's been 2 days already. I really want to reach Naji Academy as fast as possible. Shacking off all of these greedy idiots who thought they could snatch the juice of enlightenment took more effort than I expected. I was hoping they would give up if I kept the merged heavenly flames close by for them to see." First Elder Zun sighed. "I was hoping so too, but I imagine a bunch of them were waiting for you to let your guard down, like a bunch of wolves, staying near a tiger, hoping it would drop the piece of large meat in its mouth to drink something, and then they could snatch it." Xavier agreed. Although quite a number of these greedy people were eliminated by the members of the Shao Gate, several of them still trailed behind, like vampire bats that had gotten a whiff of blood. No matter how many times Xavier had them change their route, these fellows were still able to accurately follow. Xavier began to wonder if they had some sort of ability to track the juice of enlightenment itself. Such tracking abilities were fairly rare. "I'm glad we have all these experts from the Shao Gate and Naji Academy with us. I would be completely exhausted dealing with each of these guys myself." Xavier looked around gratefully. "Yes, I am glad too. And although the people chasing us are not unskilled individuals, at least a master at a similar level to Han Fang has not appeared." The doctor by his side softly spoke. "I have a bad feeling about Han Fang. That stubborn bastard will not give up easily. He desperately wants the juice of enlightenment. Therefore..." Xavier shook his head as his finger gently rubbed his storage ring. Xavier's gaze shot to the large man who was cautiously observing the activity outside the forest. "All right, let's continue on our journey. Big Yao, you should lead a couple of experts from Shao Gate to watch our backs. If anyone approaches, take care of them, but retreat back to us if you meet any enemies that you cannot defeat." "Yes, Chief." Big Yao nodded his head. Xavier exchanged glances with First Elder Zun and the others. They got up and swiftly rushed out of the forest. Behind them, Big Yao led a couple of masters from Shao Gate and slowly followed. He cautiously scanned the surroundings. The masters from across the Black Zone, who were desperate to get the juice of enlightenment, seemed to be aware that they were coming increasingly closer to the Naji Academy. Immediately, their hearts began to feel restless and uncomfortable. If Xavier's group were allowed to enter the Naji Academy, they would completely lose the opportunity to snatch the item. More and more, these masters' greed overcame their reasoning as they began to unleash various sneak attacks on Xavier's group. However, each of them ended up with a miserable death. During one of the sneak attacks, 3 expert high-level Q-masters joined hands to attack, and when one was killed, the other 2 fled miserably, having been seriously injured. It was not an easy task to snatch something from the hands of 2 elite warlords and a high-level Q-master. After the 3 elite high-level Q-masters suffered a massive defeat, the rest of the following factions began to quietly withdraw. Night fell like a dark blanket over the vast mountain range as Xavier and his friends continued their journey. A low, deep roar echoed through the mountain range. The moon gleamed above them, but very little of its light actually made it into the deep forest. They set up camp for the night and lit several fires. Everyone was exhausted, having fought so desperately for so long. They were hopeful, though. Once they passed the night, they would be able to reach the Naji Academy the next day. Then they could relax. Xavier's gaze swept across the exhausted people as he sat beside a fire. He smiled and flicked his hand. More than 10 rounds of pills flew out of his storage rings and landed in front of each person around the fires. It has been hard on everyone these past few days. Consume this medicinal pill. It will help you recover. Xavier laughed. Joy immediately surged into everyone's eyes when they heard this. They hurriedly grabbed the pills and bowed to Xavier. All of them were aware of Xavier's status as an alchemist and knew these pills were very valuable. Xavier smiled. He exchanged glances with First Elder Zun and the doctor, and after watching everyone swallow the medicinal pills, they swiftly crossed their legs and spent the time to recover their Q energy. We will reach Naji Academy tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it. Xavier's finger gently touched his storage ring as he softly murmured, I am as well, my friend. These few days have really taken a toll on all of us. These old bones of mine are not what they used to be. First Elder Zun stretched and laughed. I can imagine, and I owe you an apology, not only for dragging you into all of this, but also for not showing up to restore the fire in the Q training tower earlier. I do feel guilty about it. I should have showed up earlier. I am really sorry. Xavier bowed his head in an apologetic manner to First Elder Zun, who merely waved his sleeves dismissively. Don't mention it, Xavier. It's fine. Also, you saved us from the Demon Flame Valley. We owe you any help we can give. I appreciate it, First Elder Zun. If it's all right, can you and the doctor please stay guard? I will find a quiet place to recover my Q energy and study the Sword D technique I recently obtained. As the First Elder nodded, Xavier turned to the doctor, who also nodded. He then immediately got up and walked away from the group, deeper into the forest. Xavier walked through the dark forest for some time before a small clear stream appeared in front of him. He settled on a large rock beside the small stream. He then flicked his hand, and the 6-joint flowing sword technique scroll, which he had obtained from the auction, appeared from his storage ring. Xavier gently inhaled a breath of cool air as he slowly pushed the scroll open. His attention gradually began to focus. As Xavier's attention totally sunk into the scroll, he didn't notice what was going on in the forest around him. Time flowed on during the dark night while he was studying the scroll. Suddenly, a strange glow flashed over the storage ring on his finger. Immediately, a box shot out without any warning. A layer of illusory energy was surrounding the box that had fled from the storage ring. The illusory energy slightly wiggled. Within a breath's time, it transformed into an old man. Ha ha! Mr. Xavier, thank you for escorting me all the way. I shall take my leave of you now. The old man's shrouded figure had just appeared when it laughed at Xavier on the enormous rock in a strange manner. He did not pause for even a moment. With a flash, he gripped the box and shot toward the dark forest. The old figure's speed was impressive. However, a faint laugh sounded behind him, just as he was about to charge into the forest. It took Xavier a second to realize what had just happened. They did say that you are a cunning old demon. Ying Shan, do you really think you can rob me? Xavier's voice followed old Ying Shan. Ying Shan shot deep into the dark green forest as he escaped from Xavier with the juice of enlightenment firmly clenched in his hand. Suddenly, he was hit by a cold, sharp energy that caught him by the throat. Damn it, he's trying to prevent my escape. I need to do something. He was caught off guard, but quickly gathered his Q energy. Ying Shan was strong, and so he deflected the attacking energy with little effort on his behalf. He distorted the air around him. The path of the cold, sharp energy flew from his throat, past his shoulder, and away. Ying Shan's eyes darted around the forest. "Who's there?" He waved his hand and threw a few energy arcs into the dark forest. 5 sharp winds shot out from his hand and blasted through a number of enormous trees, sending sawdust in all directions. Ying Shan kept his eyes peeled in an attempt to locate his attacker. "Show yourself, you coward!" At that moment, he caught sight of a white-robed figure. It was the doctor. She waved her hand, and a gray fog filled the forest. "What is that smell? Is that poison? I think this fog is filled with poison. It has to be. The scent is burning in my nose and making my eyes tear." Ying Shan waved his sleeves. A wild, violent wind erupted and blew away the fog. Then he pressed down with his toes and shot high into the sky, breaking through tree branches as he moved. As he was about to turn and flee, he saw an old man hovering above him. "Zun Qin." "Not so fast, Ying Shan. I must say I'm impressed. It's quite something that you were able to hide your spiritual energy in the juice of enlightenment. Even I could barely sense your presence. This is a remarkable talent to have. If we would be in any other situation right now, I would probably ask you how you accomplished this. Even for an old and experienced expert like me, this is impressive." "I can't deny that," uttered First Elder Zun. Ying Shan smirked. "Well, thank you for the compliment, Zun. I am honored. It's not often that you're getting compliments from the First Elder of Nanji Academy's famous inner circle." Suddenly, Xavier appeared high above the forest, having arrived with his jade-green fire wings. "I'm surprised that the young man found my spiritual energy in the juice of enlightenment. Where is your friend?" Ying Shan glared at the men and then fiercely shouted out into the forest. "I know you're there. Come and join us here." The doctor flashed above the tree line. She moved and sealed off Ying Shan's escape route. Zun turned to Ying Shan. "Very smart, you old demon. Very cunning to hide your spiritual strength in the juice of enlightenment. We're lucky that Xavier is an alchemist. He possesses some rare techniques. Without them, you probably would have escaped after all." Fuming, Ying Shan spat on the ground. "I wouldn't gloat if I were you, Zun. I'd have gotten away with it if all had gone according to plan. Originally, I was going to wait until Xavier and Han Fang were fighting. Then, I'd steal the juice of enlightenment. I would have been long gone before anyone noticed." Xavier smirked. "Luckily, I killed the 3 elders from the Demon Flame Valley and scared the others off." "If you knew I was there, why didn't you act earlier?" Ying Shan scowled. "I didn't have the time to bother with you, but I agree with First Elder Zun. Credit where credit's due. Hiding your spiritual energy in the juice was brilliant. I could sense it, but I couldn't find it. I knew you were someplace close by, but didn't know where. When I got close to the Nanji Academy, I finally had time to study the juice of enlightenment," Xavier stated. Ying Shan's jaw dropped. "So you waited for me to reveal myself. You actually sensed my spirit and knew I was here in the vial." "Ying Shan, I will ask you nicely. Please give me the juice of enlightenment. I promise I will forgive you. I won't attack." Xavier watched as Ying Shan hid both of his hands deep in his sleeves, where he kept the jade box. "If we were to attack your spirit, your human body would be badly injured. And if I choose to, I could locate your human body by using my own senses. So be careful what you do here." Old Ying Shan shook his head. He was not going to let this rude young man tell him what to do. "Listen here, brat. Do you really think I'm scared of you? I could destroy the juice of enlightenment, and then what would you do?" Xavier walked closer to Ying Shan and circled around him. "If I'm correct, this spirit that I see here before me only exists because your human body is close by. That's not a trick that you can practice from empire to empire. You have to remain close by to make it work. Yeah? Well, good luck finding me, Xavier. Ying Shan's eyes twinkled with glee. I'm sure that your senses, even as a high-level Q-master, will have trouble tracking me down. Xavier turned and walked away. He narrowed his eyes. A moment later, he pointed his finger north, toward the darkness of the forest. Your body is north of here, isn't it? Ying Shan was astonished. He thought to himself, I can't believe he knows where I am. Sure, it's a secret location hidden away, but he's pointing in the right direction. If Xavier actually attacks my body when I'm practicing this difficult energy technique, he could very well kill me. When Xavier sensed worry wash over old Ying Shan's face, he turned to him. I respect you as an elder of the Black Zone, Ying Shan. That's why I made sure that no one attacked you. As long as you return the Juice of Enlightenment, I will guarantee that you are not punished. Ying Shan inhaled deeply. His gaze slowly crept toward Zun and the doctor, who waited patiently for his response. They glared at him, ready to attack. Ying Shan knew that they were far more powerful than he, and he couldn't escape if he tried. Fine. It looks like I've been outsmarted. Consider yourself victorious. Here is the Juice of Enlightenment. He waved his sleeves, and the jade box appeared. With a flourish of his fingers, he tossed it to Xavier. Here, catch. Xavier flicked his finger, and Q energy surged out to receive the jade box. The box floated in front of him. Old Ying Shan frowned at Xavier's strength. You may have the Juice of Enlightenment, but you'll never find the Heart of Enlightenment. Xavier smiled and examined the jade box. I'm not interested in the Heart of Enlightenment, just this juice. The doctor watched in deep thought. I know how hard Xavier has worked to help me control the woeful poisoned body. He was willing to become enemies with these elders who were so powerful. Xavier is so kind to me. Ying Shan pointed his finger at Xavier. I didn't ever expect you to end up with the Juice of Enlightenment with so many other people after it. I expect you to keep your promise, Xavier. Goodbye. Xavier nodded. I'm a man of my word, Ying Shan. If I say it, let it be so. Ying Shan clenched his jaw in reluctant acceptance. Then, his spirit body suddenly shook, and a moment later, Ying Shan had completely disappeared into the darkness. Zun turned to Xavier, brows furrowed. Is he really gone? Xavier closed his eyes and used his spirit sense to try to find the elder. Yes, he's gone. I can't sense him anywhere. The doctor and Zun sighed in relief. They immediately came close to see the jade box with the Juice of Enlightenment. The doctor's eyes twinkled. I can't believe he gave it to you. Without a fight. Xavier smiled. How could it be so easy? Especially from this old fox. Xavier flicked his finger, and the invisible fallen heart flame rose and enwrapped the box. Instantly, the box turned into powder under the high temperature of the fallen heart flame. The flame kept burning. Zun put his hand on Xavier's shoulder. Be careful, Xavier. Looks dangerous. Soon, the fallen heart flame revealed the Juice of Enlightenment. It glimmered and wiggled in front of them. The doctor couldn't contain her excitement. The way it moves, it looks like it's alive. Xavier moved his finger, and a thread of the fallen heart flame slowly wrapped around the Juice of Enlightenment. It shook, and then columns of white smoke rose from it. Hidden deep inside a cave of a mountain less than 1,000 yards away from Xavier, Zun, and the doctor, old Ying Shan's spirit re-entered his human body. He laughed as he sensed Xavier use his heavenly flame to burn the Juice of Enlightenment. Ha ha ha. What a foolish young man. Ying Shan, or rather his spirit, sat cross-legged in his secret cave. He had successfully hidden his spirit in the Juice of Enlightenment, but was caught by Xavier as he tried to steal it. That annoying young man. If it weren't for him interfering and ruining my plans, I would have gotten away with the Juice of Enlightenment by now. It was supposed to be mine. I paid for it. He sensed Xavier continuing to refine the juice using his heavenly flame, the hot flame that incinerated the box. Suddenly, Ying Shan gagged and then spat out a mouthful of blood. What is Xavier doing? Is he burning through the box? Ying Shan coughed and coughed as more and more blood erupted from his mouth. The box, it held my spirit, and now my spirit is under attack. I won't forget this, Xavier. Meanwhile, back in the dark forest, Xavier smiled. He waved his hand, and a brand new box appeared. He placed the juice of enlightenment inside it. He turned to Zun and the doctor. I can sense that Ying Shan will no longer be an issue. Now that we've eliminated his spirit, his body will be immensely weakened. He's strong though, so he'll probably recover eventually. Anyway, we can return to the Naji Academy. Zun nodded, and the doctor smiled at Xavier. About time. Let's get out of here. At the intersection of the Black Zone and the Naji Academy lay a small town called the Town of Peace. Life in the Town of Peace was a unique blend of the mundane and the extraordinary. The town's streets were a labyrinth of ancient, weathered buildings, but the air was always abuzz with the energy of its diverse inhabitants. Students from the academy, adventurers and traders drawn to the mysteries of the Black Zone, and locals who had seen the town evolve over decades. Xavier gazed down from the mountainside to the beautiful town in the valley below, his heart joyful. The journey had been grueling. They had been chased by a number of people who were hunting for the juice of enlightenment, but now they had arrived. Let's go. We'll be safe in the Town of Peace, and the Naji Academy is expecting us. Their experts will lend us their protection. Zun's gaze turned from the small town below to a group of figures in the distance, their pursuers. Xavier shook his head. Those guys are never going to give up. Xavier waved his hand and transformed into a black shadow. The doctor and the First Elder Zun quickly followed as they entered into the Town of Peace. Up on the mountainside, Xavier's pursuers watched as the black shadow entered the Town of Peace. Han Feng, in his familiar gray robes, watched, snarling. Xavier thinks I'm going to give up. Huh, just wait. He may have killed the elders of the Demon Flame Valley, but I'm still kicking. Enjoy your time in the city, Xavier. You don't have much longer to live. A haunting smile crossed Han Feng's face. He took one last look at Xavier and his friends, and then faded into a ghostly form, vanishing mysteriously into nothingness. In the town below, guards appeared as soon as Xavier and the others entered through the town gate. With weapons in hand, they were ready for combat. The captain of the guards was the first to recognize Zun. It's the First Elder and Xavier. They're back. The joyous cry swiftly spread through the small town. 10 elders of the Naji Academy appeared as people rushed to see if Zun had actually returned. Grandmaster Jan, the deputy headmaster of Naji Academy, barged through the other elders to meet the First Elder. You old reckless fool, you're back. I was ready to take a search party into the Black Zone if you weren't back in 2 days. Do you have any idea how worried you got me here? What am I supposed to do without you at the Academy? You know that you're the most powerful man we have here at the Academy. Zun swallowed Grandmaster Jan in a hug. Me? The most powerful man? Don't tell me you forgot about the old headmaster. Zun laughed. Forget about him? No, I would not dare. But you know that lazy old man never shows up here. Who knows what he is up to these days? Grandmaster Jan, you're so boisterous, you old fellow. If you don't control yourself, who knows how long it will be before you advance to the warlord class yourself? Pointed First Elder Zun. Grandmaster Jan smiled. What in the world does advancing to the warlord class have to do with being boisterous? Grandmaster Jan hesitated as his eyes fell on Xavier. What a surprise, Xavier. You were just a wee she-master when you first arrived at the Town of Peace, and now look at you, a high-level Q-master. Your training speed is unbelievable. There's still no one at the Naji Academy that comes close. I'm afraid our academy will never have another student like you." Xavier smiled and respectfully bowed to Grandmaster Jan. "Hello, Grandmaster Jan. It's good to see you too." "What's with the formality? With your rank, maybe I should be the one to bow to you." Xavier could tell by the smile on Grandmaster Jan's face. It was clear he was proud of him. Grandmaster Jan turned and looked around at the crowd of curious students. "Pay attention. This is the chief of the Steelgate faction, Xavier, from the Inner Circle. You know who he is. You talk about him all the time. He is a genuine high-level Q-master. Do you know the Shao Gate? You know, the faction that sends experts to protect you each time you head into the Black Zone to train? Well, Chief Xavier established the Shao Gate. Guess what? He doesn't need to be protected anymore, unlike all of you." Students' eyes lit up with wild enthusiasm as they realized that Xavier was indeed standing in front of them. Murmurs spilled into a wave of happy conversations as the students shared the news. "Is that really Xavier? He's so young, not much older than us," uttered one of the students. "He's quite handsome, better looking than his statue," pointed out another student. "It's no surprise that Xavier has become an expert high-level Q-master. Kind of wild to think he's the founder of the Steelgate faction," stated someone else from the group. "The Steelgate faction is the strongest in the Nanji Academy. Over 30 of the 50 top spots at the Inner Circle belong to members of that faction. A couple of elders held positions in the Steelgate faction too," added one of them. Xavier blushed upon hearing the students speak in this way about him. He was like a rock star, and the students didn't hold back their enthusiasm for his hard work and achievements. He was a little worried initially that no one would welcome him, as it had been 2 years since he was at the Nanji Academy. He quickly realized that the students not only remembered him, but loved him. Grandmaster Jan patted Xavier on the shoulder. "Since the establishment of the Nanji Academy, there have been very few fighters who have achieved such respect. You know that these kids are elite students. They are the best students who have come here from around the world. They're not impressed by much these days, and will tell you as much, but you, well, they're impressed by you." Xavier was embarrassed by the attention. All he could do was smile and rub the back of his head awkwardly. Thanks. I'm flattered, really." "Oh, don't be. I am only speaking the truth. When you arrived at the Nanji Academy all those years ago, I sensed that you weren't an ordinary student. Looking back, it seems I've always been good at identifying talent," Grandmaster Jan replied. Zun shook his head and waved his hand, laughing. "Hey, Grandmaster Jan, stop your boasting. We'll go to Nanji Academy, instruct the town guards to tighten our defenses. There is no need to report anyone who tries to enter from the Black Zone. Just kill them. It's already done. We know that the allure of the juice of enlightenment is too much for many. And who might this be?" Grandmaster Jan's eyes fell on the doctor. Xavier cleared his throat. "We call her the doctor. She's my friend." The doctor nodded in respect to Grandmaster Jan. "Hello, doctor. I sense that you are definitely above the She-Master, and I have a feeling you are also a bit above Xavier when it comes to strength. Impressive, really. You are naturally most welcome in our town and to the Nanji Academy." Grandmaster Jan waved her forward. "Thank you, Grandmaster Jan. I am happy to be able to visit with Xavier. He talks often about Nanji Academy and the wonderful training that he had here," said the doctor with a polite smile. Grandmaster Jan turned to Xavier, seeking clarification. "She really is a warlord, is she?" Xavier nodded. "She is a warlord, and a very powerful one at that." Grandmaster Jan was startled at Xavier's words. "I see. I could tell she was powerful, but, oh well. Young man, it seems even the people you travel with are special. You're no longer that little student from long ago." Grandmaster Jan sighed, and then turned his head before yelling at the students who had gathered around. "All right, all of you can leave. Let the town guards get back to their patrol." The students scattered somewhat unwillingly after hearing Grandmaster Jan. However, they gave Xavier a few more looks before leaving. "Let's go. Follow me back to the Nanji Academy. The Inner Circle's Q training tower needs you to replenish it. Also, I think you should go and take a look at the Steelgate faction. It's been 2 years since you were here. After all, you are its founder." Zun sighed in relief as he watched everyone leave. Xavier nodded. He looked and turned to find the Nanji Academy sitting in the distance. His heart was happy. After 2 years, he'd finally returned to this place where he had transformed from a young student into an expert. The Steelgate faction. I wonder how everyone there is doing. It's been so long since I was there. I imagine much will have changed. There was still quite a distance between the Nanji Academy and the town of Peace. The group happily set off on their journey. Xavier watched as the doctor smiled and spoke with Grandmaster Jan and the other elders in the city. He took this time to think about what had just transpired. The juice of enlightenment is safe. Now that Yingshan's spirit has been removed and I've put it into a new storage box, the juice will be more than secure. I'm sure I will have time to refine the juice later on. We must focus on this so that she can live. We just don't know when her woeful poison body will erupt. The doctor must have sensed Xavier's thoughts as her eyes met his. She smiled. "What wonderful teachers you have here at the Inner Circle, Xavier. I wish I had such training." Grandmaster Jan overheard the compliment from the powerful warlord and blushed. Xavier smiled. "Absolutely. The Inner Circle students are challenged every day to do their very best and strive. Honestly, before I came here, I had mixed emotions about becoming a part of this academy. I preferred being on my own, and, well, before I ended up in the continent of the heavens, I wasn't exactly a good student. However, I'm really glad I ended up going to Nanji Academy. It's unlike any other academy. I have learned a lot here." The group walked for some time. Finally, when he saw the little mountain stream, Xavier realized they had arrived at the Inner Circle. The First Elder Zun led the group in. It was still protected by the distorted energy shield, but with a wave of his hand, the energy lowered, and they entered. After they passed through the main gate, they saw a vast, lush green forest. Xavier's heart leapt with joy. He felt nostalgic. Memories flooded back. "I remember this forest. When I arrived here, I and the other new students had to survive fighting the older students. All of us were given a card with fire energy on it, and we were told to protect it with our lives. We were all super confused. Somehow, I managed to beat up one of the older students and pressed for answers. He explained that fire energy is used as a currency, and... Sorry, I'm rambling. It feels good to be here again." The First Elder Zun was thinking of that same competition as he looked at Xavier and commented with a chuckle. "The record you set has never been beaten. Every year, the new students try, but can't make the mark that you set so long ago. I've never seen a new student ever snatch the fire energy from the older students." Xavier smiled fondly at the nostalgia that overcame him. "I'm sure at some point, the new students will manage to snatch the fire energy from the older students, even if it takes 100 years or so. I would be surprised if me and my group would be the only ones in Nanji's history to ever accomplish that." His feet found their way to the long-remembered forest path. Zun and the others followed close behind, until, finally, they arrived at the crater-like structure that formed the Inner Circle. Xavier took a good look at the Inner Circle and turned to the First Elder Zun. "The number of students training here has really grown, huh?" "It's true. The entry requirements of the Inner Circle were relaxed a little over the last few years. Of course, this means there is more competition here. Those selected to enter the Inner Circle are special, and those who have developed the ability were naturally unwilling to have another step to climb. A strong ranking, which was not considered special, was the target that they worked hard towards. In order to advance, quite a number of students went all out to train. It's quite competitive now, to say the least." Xavier took a good look at the Inner Circle. Then he turned to Zun. "I think I'd like to take a look at the Steelgate faction and see how they're doing." The First Elder Zun nodded. "Just ask. Someone can direct you to the Steelgate faction's headquarters. After you've caught up with everyone, come to the Inner Circle Elders compound and find me. Everyone else, follow me." Zun led the doctor, she, and the others into the inner circle, leaving Xavier alone. As the others left, Xavier breathed a sigh of relief. "Finally, I can relax. Being responsible for everyone is really stressful. Although I got used to the pressure, I do feel exhausted, like I'm getting old. Wait. No, who am I kidding? I'm still a young man in my 20s, not some white-haired elder encumbered with responsibilities. I should stop whining about getting older. That's a thing to worry about in the future." As Xavier entered the streets of the inner circle, a couple of young students passed by Xavier. "Excuse me, students, where might I find the Steelgate faction?" After giving directions, one student turned to the other. "That guy's got to be new. What moron doesn't know where to find the headquarters for the Steelgate faction?" "I don't know. He looks a bit old to be a new student, though, doesn't he?" someone else said. Another young student looked at Xavier and his friends walking away. "Weird. He looks familiar for some reason." Xavier soon found himself outside of a beautiful mansion set on spacious grounds. "Man, it really does look different. It's a difference like night and day. When I joined the academy, all we had was a house with some basic rooms and a hall." The mansion's front door swung open, revealing a foyer that exuded grandeur and elegance. The high ceiling, an architectural marvel, effortlessly spanned across the second and third floors, creating an atmosphere of open, airy spaciousness. This grand entryway was adorned with a magnificent chandelier, its crystals glinting in the soft glow of the afternoon sun that streamed through the tall, arched windows. The light danced across the polished marble floor, each step echoing in the vast space. Xavier noticed 4 cold, stern-looking guards patrolling the area. They regarded him suspiciously. "Who goes there?" Xavier slowly put his hands up. "I don't want to cause a commotion here. I just want to look around." He flicked his fingers, and a faint silver light appeared. He transformed into a ghostly apparition, and then quickly flew into the interior of the Steelgate faction, right past the guards. Xavier clapped his hands together, and then reappeared deep inside the Steelgate faction. In the hall, one of the guards scratched his head. My eyes must be playing tricks on me." Xavier walked around in awe of the students' luxurious quarters when he heard a group of people cheering in the distance. What's going on? Xavier followed the noise into a large hall, where he discovered a crowd had formed around a platform, something like a makeshift stage, where a person stood. Xavier walked closer to get a better look to find a young woman in a pale blue robe, seated cross-legged on the stage. Xavier could sense her power and knew that she should be respected. As he walked in front of her, he saw it, her medicinal cauldron. At that moment, the flame in the medicinal cauldron spun quickly, and a faint medicinal fragrance was released. Xavier was in awe. She's an alchemist? I should take a look at what sort of pill she's refining. He examined the cauldron carefully and used his sense of smell to determine and analyze the ingredients she was using. That's actually a level 4 pill, a Sky Q pill. How can this young woman be capable of refining this level of pill at such a young age? Her alchemist abilities are equal to Lucian's disciple, Yuko. She must be a prodigy. That's rather impressive. The young woman was completely focused on her medicinal cauldron. Occasionally, a crystal of perspiration would glimmer on her forehead. Xavier sensed that she was very strong. Her spiritual energy controlled the flame and carefully refined the pill. Waves of rich fragrance wafted through the air, causing people to feel lightheaded. Xavier listened as many of the students murmured to each other in awe. Xin Lan's alchemy refining skills are amazing. If she can refine a Tier 4 pill, imagine what she'll be able to achieve in the future, praised one of them. Exactly. Whoever is lucky enough to marry her in the future won't ever need to worry about medicinal pills. She'll have that completely taken care of, added another boy. Xin Lan married? Yeah, right. She's got her sights high. There's no man here who could ever catch her eyes. She's basically made it impossible for anyone to date her. She said she wouldn't go out with anyone who couldn't outdo her alchemy skills. The only people who can manage that right now are the elders. It's not like she's going to date one of those old guys," laughed the first boy. "Well, there is one student who surpassed her," a girl pointed out. "Who might that be?" Both the boys asked in unison. "Our Chief Xavier refined a Tier 5 pill when he competed with that other alchemist. I forgot the guy's name, but you know who I'm talking about," reminded the girl. "You've got to be kidding me. It's been 2 years since Chief Xavier left the inner circle. You can't count him, stupid." Xavier laughed quietly under his breath. "It's funny to hear them talk about me as if I'm some legendary figure, if they only knew the truth." While Xavier was silently laughing to himself, the blue-robed young woman suddenly waved her hand, and a round pill flew out of the cauldron, landing in her hand. Those watching erupted and cheered at Shin's success. But Shin remained completely unperturbed. Her face remained cold and calm. But when she opened her eyes and sternly swept around the hall, everyone fell silent. "Well, that's a pity." Xavier's words echoed throughout the hall. "Crap." Shin scowled coldly at him. All eyes in the hall were squarely focused on Xavier. A few students audibly gasped at the insult. "Who is this guy? I've never seen him." Xavier looked up to see Shin's cold and bright eyes staring at him. She was not going to let him off the hook, not after such an insult. "You," she pointed to Xavier. "Tell me, what is there to pity?" Xavier met Shin's icy stare. Not only was her cold gaze locked on him, but all of the students gathered in the large hall of the Steelgate faction had their sights set on him too. Xavier let out a dry cough and nervously laughed. "If you were more precise with your control of the flame during refining and lengthened the time you used to form the pill, the quality of this Sky Q pill would have been a little better. I can't help but say that it's a pity. No offense." Everyone in the area murmured to one another at how bluntly Xavier imparted his wisdom to Shin. Few were qualified to teach her anything, apart from the elders from the alchemy department. "Who does this black-robed guy think he is?" the others wondered. Though Shin was stunned, she sensed that he was right. The quality of the pill might be better if she did as Xavier had said, but she wouldn't let him know that in front of her peers. She didn't like to be condescended to. If he had been an elder from the alchemist department, maybe she'd be inclined to carefully listen and learn. But Xavier was clearly closer to her age, which made it difficult for her to accept his advice. She scowled at him. "And who might you be?" "Why should it matter who I am? If you feel that what I just said is wrong, you can simply choose to ignore it," Xavier blurted. Shin glared at him. There were very few people in the inner academy who would speak to her so rudely. She gritted her teeth. "This is the headquarters of the Steelgate faction. Only Steelgate faction members are allowed to enter. You're walking around without even wearing a badge. This is against the rules. Which subsection are you attached to?" After hearing Shin's words, the surrounding members of the Steelgate faction also noticed that Xavier was not wearing a badge. They glanced around nervously. Steelgate faction had a strict rule that those who were walking within it must wear identification. It was a matter of safety. "I've come to look for someone." Having not returned to the inner academy for 2 years, he had not expected to be faced with such an embarrassing interrogation. "Looking for someone? If an outsider enters the Steelgate faction to search for someone, there must be someone escorting him. Barging in is not acceptable." Shin walked down the tall platform. A sweet fragrance wafted around her as she approached Xavier. Her eyes swept over his face. "You should be careful next time. Who are you looking for?" "Layla and Hao, or Elder Wu, I suppose. Do you know them?" Xavier rubbed his forehead. "It's important." Shin frowned. Hao and Layla's position within the inner academy were extraordinary. Even the members of the Steelgate faction seldom got to see them. Yet, this black-robed young man had actually asked them to come out and see him. "You've got a lot of nerve coming in and demanding to see them. Layla and Hao are extremely busy. They don't take random meetings with random people. Shin shook her head. Her delicate hand parted the black hair in front of her forehead. Xavier forced a smile. Fine. As he turned to leave, the crowd parted. A young lady in a red dress stood at the back, staring at Xavier as if she thought she knew him, but just couldn't quite figure out how. Her large, watery eyes stared intently at the black-robed young man who was walking past her. Xavier paused in front of the young lady. He extended his hand and patted her head in front of everyone's stunned gazes. You've grown quite a bit in the 2 years since I last saw you. The girl's eyes filled with tears as she heard the familiar voice. Xiao Mei, what's wrong? Are you all right? What did this troublemaker say to you? Shin swiftly appeared next to the young lady. She glared at Xavier. She was just about to reprimand Xavier when she was held back by Xiao Mei. Xavier, is that really you? Shin furrowed her brows. It slowly dawned on her who she was talking to. Xavier? Everyone present knew that Xiao Mei was the cousin of the founder of Steelgate Faction. Who else could it be other than the founder of Steelgate Faction, who was so famous within the Nanji Academy? The noisy space suddenly fell silent. Sunlight scattered down from the window and shone on the many stunned faces. No one was quite sure how to react. Steelgate Faction's founder, who had only existed in legends, had just appeared in front of them from out of nowhere. As Xavier smiled gently at everyone, they all stared back at him in silence. I mean, maybe we should... Could we go chat somewhere? Maybe have some tea? It's been a long journey. Maybe we can catch up for a bit until Hao and Layla are free. Xavier awkwardly rubbed his forehead again. He hadn't expected people to react so strangely to his return. Xiao Mei nodded. Let's go. I'll make us some tea. Xavier followed her, Shin trailing behind them as if she was worried for Xiao Mei and wanted to keep an eye on her. Or maybe she still wants to argue about flame temperature. The atmosphere within the spacious and well-lit hall was giddy. Only a handful of people gathered around Xavier, Xiao Mei, and Shin, and a remaining few old friends who had entered the inner academy at the same time as Xavier and had followed him when the Steelgate faction had been established. Xiao Mei stood beside Xavier. She carefully poured tea into each delicate teacup on the table. She was glad to have something to do with her hands, because she felt awkward trying to make conversation with Xavier after having not seen him for 2 years. Xavier watched her pour the tea into each cup, while he also tried to think of something to say. When she was done pouring the tea, his gaze swept over the couple of people in the hall, and he laughed. Everyone, please sit. Have some tea. We're all friends. No need to stand on formalities. Taro, who has grown into a strong, kind man, rubbed his head and laughed. Chief, we have waited for you to return. It's been a long time. Xavier remembered Taro as a simple and straightforward sort of guy. He had initially instigated the formation of the Steelgate faction. However, after having not met for many years, he had become formal and restrained in front of Xavier. After all, there were quite a lot of rumors swirling around about Xavier's exploits during the intervening years. The gap between the two of them had been quietly widened. Taro wasn't sure how to react to his old friend, now that he was a high-level Q-master who had united most of the Empire of the Heavens. Xavier lowered his gaze in front of Taro. I'm sorry, I had meant to visit earlier. It's been an eventful couple of years. Taro grinned. So we've heard. Xavier smiled and sighed deeply. After having not returned for such a long time, he began to feel like the people had changed, even though everything still looked the same. Shin raised an eyebrow and finally asked the question that quietly tormented her. You were really the chief? Why? Do I not look like I could be the chief? Xavier asked back. Shin's face reddened with embarrassment, though she tried hard to conceal it. She sized up Xavier carefully. Well, no, it's not that. It's just that, well, the statue doesn't quite do you justice. Your face is much more defined, and your eyes. Shin caught herself. Don't think too hard about it. That's why I failed to recognize you earlier. Don't blame me. Blame the artist hired to sculpt your statue. Xavier laughed and shook his head. If I'm not mistaken, I think she thinks I'm handsome. You know, Shin, he was about to reply when the door to the great hall slammed open, echoing throughout the building. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Xavier turned to the entrance. We get no word from you for 2 years. Then you show up and expect everyone to fawn all over you, huh? Kid hasn't changed a bit. Xavier could not help but smile when he heard this familiar voice. He looked up to find a short-haired woman who laughed, and a man with a blood-colored heavy sword on his back, standing in the doorway. Despite their words, their normally stern faces were filled with warmth and joy. As the doors burst open, a hush fell over the hall. Every gaze, including Xavier's, shifted towards the entrance. Standing there were Hao Wu and Layla, their arrival cutting through the evening's monotony like a sharp blade. Hao, with his usual swagger, locked eyes with Xavier and smirked. Well, well, Xavier, still reigning over your little kingdom, I see. His voice was laced with a mix of jest and challenge. Layla, however, had a different air about her. Her short hair framed a face that was no longer the face of the little witch Xavier remembered, but that of a resolute, grown woman. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Xavier, not with warmth, but with a steely resolve. Hao told me that he ran into you and that you planned to show up. I wasn't sure if I could believe him. It's been ages since you showed up. You look well, Xavier, for someone who's been off the radar for so long. Xavier stood, feeling the weight of her words. He attempted to ease the tension. Layla, how? It's been a while. Layla didn't relent. Yes, it has. And during your absence, guess who had to pick up the pieces? Your sudden departure left quite the mess, Chief. Xavier's smile faltered, but he met her gaze squarely. I know, and for that, I'm sorry. My leaving was abrupt, but it was necessary. Hal leaned against a pillar, watching the exchange with an amused glint in his eyes. Come on, Layla, let's not spoil the reunion. We've all had our share of adventures, haven't we? Layla's expression softened slightly, but her stance remained firm. Adventure is one thing, Hal. Responsibility is another. But... She paused, her eyes softening, as she finally allowed a small smile. It is good to see you again, Xavier, despite everything. As they took their seats, the initial stiffness gave way to a more relaxed conversation. They began sharing their stories, the years of separation unfolding between them. Layla's words, though candid, were laced with a sense of relief at their reunion. Xavier shared tales of his travels, his voice tinged with a hint of regret. The world beyond is vast, but it taught me the value of what we have here. Hao chuckled. And here I was thinking you'd become a hermit, but it's true. There's no place like home. Layla listened, her demeanor thawing as the night progressed. I've learned a great deal too, about strength and about forgiveness. Her gaze met Xavier's. The air was now filled with laughter and nostalgia, the initial awkwardness forgotten. They spoke of their trials and triumphs, each story a testament to their resilience. Raising his glass, Xavier looked at his friends. To rekindled bonds and new beginnings, may we always find our way back to each other. Cheers to that. Their glasses clinked. Xavier took a swig of his drink and turned to Layla. How's the faction coming along? It's many times better than back then. Pride surfaced on Layla's face. Hao is currently an inter-academy elder. I also have the qualification to be promoted to an elder. However, after considering that the Steelgate faction still needs to be managed, I don't have any plans on leaving anytime soon. After all, once one becomes an elder, one cannot intervene too much in the matters between students. There's not been much change within the members compared to back then. The numbers have fallen significantly. It's likely that there are less than 300 students now. Hao smiled. Currently, the recruitment requirements of Steelgate faction are extremely harsh. Usually, no more than 50 people are recruited each year. However, Don't underestimate these few hundred people. Most of the top people within the Inner Academy have joined us. Their potential is extraordinary." Xavier nodded. "Quality is more important than quantity. It's also good this way. The harsher recruitment requirements cause the members of the Steelgate faction to put in a greater effort. It's good to weed out anyone who isn't dedicated to their training." Xavier was no longer that novice who did not know anything about establishing and running a faction. He, with the help of his friends and brothers of course, had established 2 large factions, the Steelgate faction and the Shao Alliance. "How many members of the Steelgate faction will enter the Shao Gate after they graduate now? Part of the reason I kept the Steelgate faction going after my departure was to make the students join the Shao Gate once they graduate after all." Xavier's finger tapped on the table. "Quite a few." Layla straightened herself. "Every member who is selected to enter Steelgate faction is informed about the relationship between Steelgate faction and Shao Gate. We also allow some members to enter the Shao Gate in advance in order to increase adaptability. Other than some special circumstances, there are 20 or so members of our Steelgate faction entering Shao Gate every year," she added. "Moreover, the current relationship between our Steelgate faction and Shao Gate is also something that the Nanji Academy is aware of. They not only did not oppose it, but instead seem to support our mission. This makes the Shao Gate more appealing to students. Both factions support one another and obtain the greatest safeguard in this chaotic place." Hal laughed. Xavier nodded, smiling. The proper functions of the Steelgate faction had exceeded his expectations. As long as the Steelgate faction existed, the strength of the Shao Gate would greatly increase every year. Given enough time, likely no other factions would be able to contend with it in the future. "It's been tough on all of you during these 2 years. I'm so sorry for that." Xavier sighed. He faced Layla and Hal and sincerely thanked them. "If it had not been for you two, it's likely that Steelgate faction wouldn't have been able to function, and Shao Gate would have fallen by now too." "Ha, don't give me that. If you really feel guilty, you stay and help." Layla grinned. Xavier let out a bitter laugh. "I wish I could stay here. However, I have too many problems I have to solve back home." Hal smiled. "Huh, she's just complaining. How long will you stay in the Inner Academy this time?" Everyone looked at Xavier expectantly. "Not for too long, I'm afraid. Once I resolve the issues with the Q training tower here, I plan to head to the continent to search for heavenly flames. It will likely take a fair amount of time. After all, it is difficult to find a heavenly flame." Xavier mused. A glow flickered in Shin Lan's eyes as she heard this, but she said nothing. "A heavenly flame? So that's what he's after." "You always lead such a busy life." Hal bitterly laughed. "But since you're back, you should also meet the students from Steelgate faction. They're extremely curious about you. All of them view you as their idol. That position is something that even Layla and I cannot compete with. Some of the students already began to wonder if we just made you up to put the bar on their training goals higher." Xavier laughed when he heard this. He stood up. "That's only natural. Since I've returned, how can I not meet my own students?" Xiao Mei looked at Xavier as he stood up. She smiled a little. She was glad he had brought his calming presence back to the academy, even if he couldn't stay long. Xavier, after spending some time with Hao's group, felt the pull of his next commitment. Excusing himself with a polite nod, he made his way briskly through the throngs of students from the Steelgate faction. Their eyes followed him with a mix of reverence and curiosity, whispering among themselves as if he were a legend sprung to life from the pages of a story. He navigated the familiar, yet strangely distant streets of the Inner Academy, his thoughts a tangled web of the past and present. Reaching the Elder's compound, he paused momentarily to collect himself before stepping into the meeting room. Inside, First Elder Zun sat alone, his presence filling the room with an aura of solemnity. As Xavier entered, Zun looked up, his eyes sharp, yet carrying a warmth that belied his stern exterior. Zun, who was reading an old book in the room, raised his head upon hearing the sound of a door opening and pushed his reading glasses up his nose. He saw Xavier, looking disheveled and exhausted. Are you now aware of the degree of popularity that you possess within the inner academy? In so many years, I have never seen any student receive such treatment." Xavier let out a laugh, tinged with a hint of bitterness, as he found a chair across from Zun's desk and sank into it. "First Elder, I must say, your students have interesting ways of showing admiration. One of them actually wanted a piece of my clothing as a keepsake." A wry smile played on his lips. Zun couldn't help but let out a chuckle, trying to suppress the amusement on his face. "Xavier, surely you didn't come all the way to Nanji Academy just to be a celebrity among the students, or to assist with the Heart Flame in the Q Training Tower. There must be another reason for your visit." The atmosphere shifted as Xavier's demeanor grew solemn. He nodded slowly, his hesitation evident. "First Elder, I assume the headmaster isn't around?" Zun leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "That's correct. He's a wanderer at heart, and hasn't been back in over a decade. We only hear from him sporadically. Why do you ask? Are you looking for him? I did tell you that I am sure you will meet him eventually, though I cannot say when exactly. It might be years." With a heavy sigh, Xavier carefully opened his black robe, revealing a strange, ominous black spot on his chest, surrounded by mysterious lines that resembled the cage imprisoning it. Zun's expression transformed instantly upon seeing the black mark, his spiritual perception immediately alerting him to the gravity of the situation. "You're poisoned, aren't you?" Xavier gave a bitter smile and nodded. He then recounted the entire ordeal, starting from the beginning. Zun's face grew increasingly troubled as he listened. "And you need to find an elite war king." He paused, shaking his head in dismay. "There are no other elite war kings here, apart from the headmaster. While Nanji Academy does have some formidable hidden reserves, none match the strength of a war king. They might at best temporarily reach that level by combining forces and sharing Q energy, but they are bound to the Academy. They won't act unless they face an existential threat. I can't command them in this matter." Hearing this, Xavier could only sigh, a sense of resignation in his eyes. He had known it was a long shot. The old guardians had remained hidden, even during dire crises in the past. They were unlikely to emerge for his sake now. Left with no other options, Xavier exhaled softly. "If no elite war king can assist, then there's only one other path I can take." "What would that be?" Zun inquired, his tone laced with curiosity. Xavier's eyes held a determined glint as he spoke. "I'll have to seek out another heavenly flame." "Finding another heavenly flame? That is quite a gamble. I am aware of how rare they are. Honestly, if it were not for sheer dumb luck and the strength of our headmaster, our academy also would have never obtained the Fallen Heart Heavenly Flame. You were searching for a needle in a haystack." The First Elder Zun was startled when he heard Xavier say this was his only option to get rid of the poison in his body. Xavier's expression became even more solemn as he studied Zun's stunned face. "That's right, but as I mentioned, the Q method that I practice gets some of its strength from a heavenly flame. Therefore, if I am able to obtain a new kind of heavenly flame, I should be able to completely resolve this demon poison spot." Heavenly flame. It's easier said than done when it comes to obtaining these things. The attraction of the heavenly flame in the continent of the heavens is even greater than the so-called juice of enlightenment. If rumor were to spread, it would invite a countless number of powerful people to try and take it from you before you could consume it. Moreover, the heavenly flames that exist on the continent of the heavens are so few that they are countable on 2 hands. Even just searching for one would require an endless amount of time and effort. Zun smiled bitterly and shook his head. Xavier also sighed. "It's my only option. Therefore, regardless of how difficult it is, I must still go and look for it. The reason I have come to the Nanji Academy this time is to inquire if you know any information regarding other heavenly flames. After all, Your understanding of the continent of the heavens is much greater than mine." First Elder Zun helplessly shook his head as he met Xavier's hopeful gaze. "Why don't you ask your teacher, Master Lao, about this? With him being an alchemist Grand Master, his understanding of the heavenly flames is far greater than mine. I think he would have a lead on where you can find one." Xavier's face fell. "Master Lao has already fallen into the hands of the Hall of Souls. One of the reasons that I am so anxious to search for the heavenly flame is because of the poison within my body. The other is that I wish to obtain strength from the heavenly flame and rescue Master Lao from the hands of the Hall of Souls." "Master Lao has fallen into the hands of the Hall of Souls?" Zun's voice rose in disbelief, echoing through the room. "I had no idea. How could this have happened? As powerful as he is, shouldn't he be able to escape from them?" Xavier shook his head bitterly. "I'm afraid it's not that easy. They have Master Lao and my father." The fist under his sleeve slowly tightened. Zun leaned forward and patted Xavier's arm consolingly. He then frowned. "I wonder just why that mysterious faction needs so many powerful spiritual bodies. They cannot possibly be up to any good. The headmaster used to have some conflict with them and had a big fight with a master from the Hall of Souls who had become an Elder King. However, he did not manage to gain much of an upper hand." Elder King? The corner of Xavier's mouth soured when he heard this term. He knew that the Hall of Souls had people who possessed this form of address, and that they were some ultimate masters of the War King class. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist an expert at that class now. Zun's expression grew grave as he leaned closer, his words heavy with caution. "I gather you are now mortal enemies of this faction. You should be more careful in the future. Before you have absolute confidence, it is best that you do not go to find Master Lao. Otherwise, it's a suicide mission, and you will only get yourself, and possibly those you love, killed. The Hall of Souls has unimaginable strength. Even the headmaster was extremely fearful of this mysterious organization when he mentioned them to me years ago." Xavier nodded. "I've already fought a few of their minor protectors, and they nearly killed me. If Medusa, Lily, and the doctor hadn't helped me, I would be dead. I would not survive an encounter with their Elder King at the strength I am now, which unfortunately brings me back to the heavenly flames." Zun folded his hands. "Your Master Lao had many friends when he was younger. Quite a number of powerful fellows on the continent of the heavens had some relationship with him. Although these people might not oppose the Hall of Souls on their own to help you, they are still a hidden strength. Of course, if it's possible, it's best that you find someone to fight beside you, especially someone who knows the Hall of Souls well." Startled, Xavier leaned forward, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Who are you talking about?" Zun straightened, a look of deep respect washing over his face. "Master Aki." "Master Aki?" Xavier's heart leapt after hearing this name again. This wasn't the first time he had heard it. He didn't know much about Master Aki. However, there were two things that he was aware of. The first was that this person's relationship with Master Lao was extremely deep. The second was that this person was a genuine War King. "That's right, Master Aki. He was Master Lao's close confidant. A while back, Master Lao had disappeared without warning, and Han Fang announced that he had burned to death while refining a pill. However, Master Aki, amongst many others who knew Master Lao, refused to believe this. Ever since, he has roamed all over the continent, searching for information relating to Master Lao. It was because Han Fang was worried that Master Aki would discover something that Han Fang ended up hiding in the Black Zone for so many years. During Master Aki's search, he fought with the Hall of Souls several times. However, I'm not very clear about the exact reason." Xavier slowly nodded, considering. "If you are able to find him, he would definitely treat you like his own disciple, given your status as Master Lao's disciple. You and he have the same goal. He and Master Lao are at least as close as brothers, and he would never let him be left in the hands of the Hall of Souls. Master Aki would be a good, and more importantly, a powerful ally." Xavier nodded. "But the continent of the heavens is so huge. How will I find an elite war king who doesn't want to be found?" First Elder Zun leaned back, his gaze thoughtful, as he spread his hands in a gesture of emphasis. "This will depend on your luck. Master Aki is extremely strong. Even the headmaster praises him highly. It will be quite beneficial to you if you find him. You would not need to worry about the Hall of Souls seeking revenge in the future if you had his protection. I think it's a safer bet to look for him than to chase after heavenly flames." Xavier shook his head, a look of resignation in his eyes. "I will try my best. However, I feel that I should inquire about a little more information related to the heavenly flames before this. Regardless of what kind of help I can find, I feel that raising my own strength is the most important thing. First Elder, if you have any clues related to a heavenly flame, please inform me regardless of how low the chances of success are. This is extremely important to me." He thought about the 3 Demon Lotus Heavenly Flame map fragments hidden in his storage ring, but chose not to mention them. It wasn't a matter of trust in First Elder Zun. The allure and danger of the Demon Lotus Flame were too great. Master Lao's stern warning to never reveal the map to anyone echoed in his mind, a secret he had kept even when acquiring the fragment from the Ice Emperor Hai. Zun sighed, leaning back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Xavier's earnest face. His fingers tapped gently on the tabletop, eyes narrowing in thought. "I do indeed know something related to other heavenly flames, but it is very unlikely to help you." His eyes lifted, meeting Xavier's. "I wonder if you have heard of a faction called the Burning Valley faction." Xavier's head snapped up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "I do. I have a secret technique that used to belong to them, the Skyfire secret technique. Master Lao mentioned them a long time ago." Zun's voice was measured as he shared his knowledge. "This faction has a kind of heavenly flame in its lineage since ancient times, the Dragon Lightning Flame, ranked 12th on the heavenly flame ranking, surpassing even the Fallen Heart Flame. But its exact use and location, or what guards it, I'm not entirely sure." Xavier's lips curled into a wry smile upon hearing this. The idea of obtaining the Dragon Lightning Flame from the Burning Valley faction seemed daunting, to say the least. Zun tapped his fingers rhythmically. "This is the only heavenly flame I'm aware of. If you think you're up for it, you can try to seek it out. Just be wary. The Burning Valley faction's members are not only quick-tempered, but formidable. Being caught would mean making yet another powerful enemy." A small, knowing smile played on his lips. "Though it seems you're no stranger to making formidable enemies." Xavier let out a snort, acknowledging the understatement with a shake of his head. The Dragon Lightning Flame was virtually the heart of the Burning Valley faction. Stealing it would put him in their crosshairs, no doubt. But the stakes, saving Master Lao and his father, made the risk seem worth it. Zun leaned forward slightly, a hint of caution in his tone. "They won't rest until they get their revenge." "They can get in line," Xavier smirked. In the midst of their solemn contemplation, a cool, indifferent voice suddenly pierced the silence, carrying an air of authority. "Although the Dragon Lightning Flame is a heavenly flame, the Burning Valley faction has marked it with a special blood spiritual imprint. Without practicing their specific Q method, it's impossible to truly possess it." Startled, Xavier whirled around, extending his hand towards the door. A powerful suction force erupted, shattering the door, as a blue-clad lady was pulled into the room amidst a startled exclamation. In a swift movement, Xavier's hand closed around her delicate neck, holding her firmly. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "And how, pray tell, do you know so much about this?" Xavier glared at Shin. He pressed his fingers tightly around her neck and held her aloft a few inches above the ground. Shin didn't flinch at his murderous glare. She remained calm, as if she was sitting down to tea with him. "Why are you eavesdropping?" Xavier frowned. "What business is this of yours?" Zun's face twisted into a frown, his voice rising with authority and surprise. "What on earth are you doing here, child? This room is off limits to students. How dare you creep around listening at doors?" His stern gaze bore down on the intruder, a clear reprimand for her audacity. Shin gently bit her lip in the face of Zun's reprimand.
"Grandpa Zun, I did not eavesdrop or barge in intentionally."
"Grandpa Zun, are you acquainted with this spy?" Xavier was stunned when he heard the way Shin addressed the First Elder Zun. His gaze turned to Zun as he kept a hold of Shin's throat. "Yes, this girl is the granddaughter of an old friend of mine. She was sent to the academy last year, and he asked me to train her. She is an extraordinarily talented alchemist. I cannot guess what possessed her to behave this way." Xavier slowly nodded and unclenched his hand from her neck. "Since you were able to eavesdrop for such a long time in front of First Elder Zun's and my eyes, you must have consumed some pill that can hide your aura. You meant to eavesdrop. What on earth were you hoping to learn?" Shin's face reddened slightly under the focus of Xavier's dark eyes. She immediately clenched her teeth.
"Okay, fine, I confess. I did come to eavesdrop on purpose, but only because I needed to ask for your help. Why are you so angry? I can tell you that if you plan to focus your attention on the Dragon Lightning Flame, you would only end up offending a powerful faction for no reason. They will surely hunt you down and kill you."
"You have no idea what you're talking about. I have my reasons." After all, Xavier had finally obtained a little information regarding a heavenly flame. He was not willing to give up so easily. Shin held her neck.
"Like I said, the Dragon Lightning Flame has been passed on within the Burning Flame Valley for hundreds of years. All sorts of powerful warriors over the generations have left behind a blood spiritual imprint within its essence that is difficult, if not impossible, to remove. Unless you practice the Q method of the Burning Flame Valley, Green Profound Serene Flame Skill, you will definitely not be able to truly control it. Even if you manage to obtain the Dragon Lightning Flame, it would end up killing you."
Xavier's heart immediately sank. He sat back down in his chair. "First Elder, is what she said true?" Zun's face was filled with uncertainty. "I was not aware of this. However, if Shin says that it is like this, then it probably is true. No wonder the Burning Flame Valley has been able to preserve the Dragon Lightning Flame for so long. Their method is so secretive. I have underestimated them." Xavier scowled. Was this information he had come so far to find going to turn out to be completely worthless? "What makes you so sure she's telling the truth? She was sneaking around, listening at doors. She's been hostile to me since I got here." "Shin comes from the central plains of the Q Energy continent. The Burning Flame Valley is located in that area. Therefore, she has some understanding of them. I trust her. She is not a liar," replied First Elder Zun. "Central Plains? I've never heard of it," Xavier uttered. Zun's expression lightened, a smile touching his lips as he delved into the details. "The Central Plains is the middle region of the continent of the heavens. That area is vast, teeming with countless intricate factions and unique communities, elusive and rich in secrets. Many of the continent's most esteemed Q masters hail from there." His smile widened a bit. "Moreover, it's a place where you might just find some clues about the origins of your little magical beast friend." Xavier exhaled softly, turning to look at Shin, who maintained a calm smile. He raised an eyebrow slightly, a silent question in his gaze. "You have something to say, I suppose?" Xavier could not immediately trust Shin, since she had eavesdropped on the conversation between him and First Elder Zun. She did not seem to be brainless, but neither did she seem entirely upfront about her intentions. She clearly wanted something. Shin clenched her teeth.
"Do you really wish to find some clues about a heavenly flame?"
"Yes," Xavier answered.
"You can forget about the Dragon Lightning Flame. The Burning Flame Valley has passed it down for centuries. They already possess a nearly perfect preservation method for it. Even if you are able to obtain it, you would not be able to use it.
Shin hesitated for a moment after seeing Xavier nod his head heavily before she slowly spoke. Do you have a method to resolve this problem? Because I need that flame. Perhaps you're warning me away from it because you want it for yourself, blurted Xavier.
No, I do not have a method to allow you to resolve the issue, but I do know of a clue about another heavenly flame, ranked even higher than the dragon lightning flame. It will be easier to snatch than the dragon lightning flame.
Xavier suddenly sat bolt upright. His eyes were heated as he looked at Shin. An excitement that was difficult to hide was present in his voice. Another heavenly flame?
Yes,
Shin nodded, taking a step back, as if unnerved by Xavier's enthusiasm. Tell me, I will give you whatever you ask of me if you help me find another heavenly flame. Shin's demeanor shifted, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice.
First, I need to know, are you a level 6 alchemist?
As Xavier nodded, a curious spark lit up her eyes.
Then I have information about the heavenly flame, but only if you agree to help me with something.
Xavier responded without hesitation. Yes? Her delicate hand clenched slightly as she spoke with newfound resolve.
Help my clan reclaim its elder's seat in the Pill Tower.
The mention of the Pill Tower took Xavier back, his expression shifting to one of surprise as his brows furrowed. The Pill Tower, a revered faction of alchemists, held a prestigious position on the continent of the heavens. The Pill Tower, he echoed, processing the request. I imagine the requirements for such a position are quite demanding. Zun shook his head, a hint of reprimand in his tone. Shin, don't ask for impossible things. With Xavier's current level 6 alchemist strength, it would be impossible for him to help your clan gain the elder's seat once again. It is not as though you are not aware that the requirement there is extremely harsh. Unless one reaches the level of a level 7 alchemist, the chances of success are extremely low.
His talent is such that he was able to reach level 6 alchemist at such a young age. If he is willing to help, my clan has a chance.
Shin was unmoved by Zun's admonishment. She still stubbornly looked at Xavier.
If you are willing to help me, I'll give you a clue about the heavenly flame.
Xavier fell silent in the face of Shin's nervous yet heated eyes. He had adopted a certain respectful attitude toward the Pill Tower. The abilities of this special faction were the most powerful he had seen with the exception of the Hall of Souls. The Pill Tower was a frightening place that gathered all the top alchemists in the continent of the heavens. He was not confident he could sway them. The heat in Shin's eyes was slowly extinguished, as though cold water was poured over her, as Xavier remained silent. She thought to herself,
how can I believe the legends about this man? And how can I think he would help me? He cares only about empowering himself.
As Shin turned to leave, Xavier drew in a deep breath, his words slow and deliberate. I can't say how difficult it will be to help your clan regain the elder's seat in the Pill Tower, and I can't promise that my efforts will guarantee success. But if you provide me with a useful clue about a heavenly flame, I promise to do everything in my power to assist you. What do you say? Hearing his commitment, a tremor of emotion ran through Shin. Xavier's words, uncertain as they were, offered a glimmer of hope in the shadow of her clan's potential demise. She quickly nodded, an expression of gratitude flickering across her face. A smile broke across Xavier's face as he battled to contain the mix of anxiety and excitement surging within him. Since you agree, now it's your turn. Tell me everything you know about this heavenly flame. Shin smiled slightly upon hearing what Xavier had to say. She took a deep breath, took that moment to arrange her thoughts, and only then said,
Actually, the clue that I mentioned regarding this heavenly flame is also related to the Pill Tower. My clan once held an elder seat in the Pill Tower. As such, I am aware of some information related to that as well.
Xavier frowned. The Pill Tower? If the heavenly flame is in the hands of the Pill Tower, then how could I possibly hope to obtain it? The Pill Tower is not the Naji Academy. It would certainly not allow a heavenly flame to fall into the hands of another person. Xavier might not know the exact power of the Burning Valley, but he could easily ascertain that the Burning Valley was nowhere near as strong as the Pill Tower. Shin patted his arm consolingly as she reassured him.
I know what you were worried about, but this is nothing for you to concern yourself with. The Dragon Lightning Flame may well be an heirloom of the Burning Valley, but no one has claimed the Heavenly Flame, not even anyone from the Pill Tower. Anyone strong enough to bear the Heavenly Flame, yourself included, has the right to possess it. Even the Pill Tower would not object to that. After all, the Pill Tower is not the Burning Valley.
Xavier's frown relaxed and neutralized a little. He looked at the First Elder Zune by his side, who nodded at him, but only slightly. Okay, thank you. And since you know about all of this, is there any chance you know what kind of heavenly flame it is that I nearly gave myself a heart attack over?
Xavier, you can rest assured that the Pill Tower's heavenly flame will be of some interest to you.
Shin laughed.
That depends, of course, on if you've heard of the Cosmic Heavenly Flame.
The Cosmic Heavenly Flame? Xavier was startled to hear the name. Since he was now at least a level 6 alchemist, his understanding of the heavenly flames and their ranking system had grown significantly. So he naturally knew the Cosmic Heavenly Flame by its rank, and by the reputation that had earned it its rank. Of course I've heard of it. There were some notes on it in Han Fang's storage ring. The Heavenly Flame's ranking had the Cosmic Heavenly Flame ranked at 9th place. That put it 2 positions above Master Lao's White Heavenly Flame. They say it is very ethereal and difficult to find because it was formed, not in the ground, but instead in the distant stars. The scribes of the ancient texts noted that silver flames would fall from the sky when the Cosmic Heavenly Flame was formed. The ground within 1,000 miles would crumble to dust, and the atmosphere was so thick with fire and smoke and dust that one could not tell night from day, nor see the stars appear in the sky, nor feel the sunlight crack through upon its rise. Since it was formed in the stars, where ordinary people could not reach it, the Cosmic Heavenly Flame was generally allowed to exist for a much longer period than the more accessible varieties, and so could evolve into its stronger form. Once evolved, most Cosmic Heavenly Flames were only ever retrieved by the most intelligent and extraordinary beings. Finding it was difficult for these beings, but extracting it was even more so. What is even more outstanding than its high ranking is its special ability. It says that it allows the person possessing it to have an unusually tenacious life force and endure all kinds of attacks that would fall or even kill warriors without it. One could swiftly recover from one's injuries, regardless of how intense an attack one had endured. One's fighting strength would also swiftly rise to recover with the rest of the body. The recovery speed of the Cosmic Heavenly Flame largely depended on the seriousness of one's injuries. Xavier explained with wild enthusiasm. He was quickly interrupted by the First Elder Zune. Xavier, I hate to interrupt you, but as far as I know, this flame won't make you invincible. There are some injuries that the Cosmic Heavenly Flame would have difficulty healing. Damage could be done to the heart and brain, for example, and that could be permanent and perhaps even lethal, especially if the damage was done by someone of a higher rank with more Q energy. Xavier was surprised that the First Elder Zune interrupted him. How do you know about this heavenly flame, First Elder Zune? The First Elder chuckled and winked. I have lived a long life and heard of many tales. Why are you so surprised? Xavier flushed red and rubbed the back of his head. You're right. Sorry, First Elder, but the appeal of the Cosmic Heavenly Flame is really insane, reaching legendary status among the many people who have sought it. Not only would it make a warrior tougher to kill, but it would give them a longer life in general. All of these protections to its wielder's life made it a popular item to seek. Honestly, I am very tempted by it as well. He smiled. The smile on Shin's face grew even wider when he saw Xavier smile. That's right. So you are interested in it? Xavier laughed. Yes, of course I'm interested. Who wouldn't be? But if something as potent and life-extending as the Cosmic Heavenly Flame is within the borders of the Pill Tower, then they would seek to keep it as secure and protected as possible. Obtaining it is, as I had already said, easier said than done. My concerns, the concerns that you dismissed, were perfectly valid. The First Elder Zun, still at Xavier's side, nodded in support of his postulation. If Xavier did manage to take the heavenly flame from the pill tower, they would hate him so much for it that they would make sure he did not get out of there alive. The cosmic heavenly flame may be rare, but it would not be worth it to so grievously offend them in the acquisition. They are infamous for their power. Even your teacher was quite afraid of them. Not afraid enough of them to join them when they invited him, but still.
Xavier, you don't have to worry about any of that. If you can get the cosmic heavenly flame, it means you can. And if you're able to, then it's yours by all rights. The pill tower wouldn't dare hate someone so much just for doing something he was able to do. That's how things are done.
Shin giggled and smiled.
The cosmic heavenly flame was merely discovered by the pill tower, not kept or cared for by them. They didn't pay for it either, as far as I know. They can't even subdue it.
But it is still theirs, Xavier remarked.
If they cannot subdue it, then taking control of it is doing them a favor. If the things I have heard are true, then the pill tower discovered the cosmic heavenly flame quite some time ago. The experts from the pill tower have naturally attempted to subdue it over the intervening years, but to no avail. And you know the dangers of pill refinement and subduction well yourself, right, Xavier?
Right.
Those explosions can be deadly, even at your alchemist rank. But this is much more severe. Grievous injury after grievous injury, loss after loss. Rather than lose any more of their alchemists, they chose instead to use a comparatively simple sealing method to merely temporarily seal the cosmic heavenly flame. But we all know that kind of seal cannot be maintained forever, especially over something so incredibly powerful as the cosmic heavenly flame.
Shin explained. Xavier slowly sat back in his chair. His eyes studied Shin and determined that she was, as far as he knew at least, telling the truth about the matter. He waved a hand at her. All right, go on.
Over that time, the cosmic heavenly flame had continued to evolve, making it even harder to subdue. After some discussion about the difficulty of the task and the skill level of the alchemists left standing to do anything about the task, they decided to outsource the subduing.
As she said this last part, her lips curled into a smile. Outsource it. Xavier was stunned to hear this. The pill tower is willing to allow outsiders to subdue their cosmic heavenly flame? He added,
Well, kind of. Of course, there are some limitations to the whole process. Every 30 years, the Q Energy continent holds a grand pill gathering, where all the greatest and most influential alchemists join together. It's hosted by the pill tower, of course.
Shin elaborated as she saw Xavier's confusion. Only natural. But I've never heard of this pill gathering, and I'm a level 6 alchemist. Honestly, I think at this point I'm getting closer to the 7th level, not to brag or anything. Shouldn't I have heard of this pill gathering? First Elder Zun's memory kicked in, and he took over explaining the process. This pill gathering is a grand affair, but it happens very rarely. Countless geniuses from all over the continent come to give it a try. Xavier furrowed his brows. But am I not a genius? As a level 6 alchemist in his 20s? Not genius enough, I guess. The First Elder mocked. Hey, Xavier exclaimed. The First Elder chuckled. I remember your master had obtained a champion spot in a pill gathering back in the day. This made him renowned throughout the continent. Shin looked at Xavier, agog.
Your master got a champion spot in the pill gathering?
Apparently. Xavier laughed apologetically, also unaware of this up until now. Shin was stunned.
Do you have any idea how big of a deal this is? No wonder you've developed so quickly as an alchemist. As long as one makes it into the top 10 at the pill gathering, one will be allowed to attempt to subdue the cosmic heavenly flame. This, in addition to the rich reward given by the pill tower. One's success at this, as an alchemist and warrior of your rank, would surely understand, will rely entirely on one's abilities. So if you are as confident in your abilities, then you can go and participate in this upcoming iteration of the pill gathering. Complicated, I know, but it's the only official method available to obtain the cosmic heavenly flame.
Xavier slowly sighed, thinking it carefully through. Although he was very competitive, all of this was going to be a lot of effort, and doing all of this to get the alluring cosmic heavenly flame.
What do you say, Xavier? Are my clues worth your guarantee?
She asked with a sly smile. Yes, shouted Xavier excitedly. Shin was greatly relieved to see Xavier accept her proposition to go to the Pill Tower's Pill Gathering to earn the chance to subdue the cosmic heavenly flame. Her grin grew from ear to ear.
Well, in that case, I look forward to our great and joyous partnership.
Xavier smiled. His excitement was comparable to hers. He had finally found a clue about another heavenly flame after such a long time. Although there was still a great gap in skill and power, as well as the distance that he would have to overcome to reach the cosmic heavenly flame, at least, Xavier finally had a target. Shin did not want to waste any time.
When should we head out? There is quite a distance from Nanji Academy to the Central Plains, so we should start sooner rather than later to account for various roadblocks, hindrances, and dangers along the way.
Xavier smiled, though a little less widely. I have to settle the issue of the Q training tower in the inner circle first. Don't get me wrong, I would love to head out immediately, but I have a feeling the First Elder will kill me right here and now if I don't settle things with the tower first. The First Elder in question rolled his eyes at the youths before him. Why the rush, Miss Shin? Even though Xavier has agreed to help you, it is not likely that he can help your clan with his current alchemy skills. Although a Tier 6 alchemist is rarely seen in this place, he would not be considered anything near a top expert within the confines of the Pill Tower. Shin blushed and let out an awkward chuckle.
Of course I know this, but since Xavier has already become a Tier 6 alchemist at his young age, I am quite confident in him. Such a talent is rarely seen, even in the Pill Tower.
Her smile had a hint of a smirk, because she knew First Elder Zun was unhappy about her pulling Xavier away. First Elder Zun rolled his eyes at Shin, then immediately turned his gaze to Xavier, saying with a sigh, Look, I know that you have a lot of things on your plate, and because of that, you are anxious to increase your strength. If I'm being honest, the Central Plains is a great place to hone your skills and train your strengths. Many of the true top experts and factions gather there. If you can make a name for yourself there, it will undoubtedly benefit you. But you should also be careful. There are a lot of strong warriors there, and it will be dangerous. You don't have such a reputation bolstering opportunities without them also having the potential to be incredibly harmful. You must be cautious enough to assess each situation before diving into it. As for the Pill Gathering, it is the single most important convening of alchemists in the world. Your current alchemy skills are considered outstanding to outsiders, but attempting to reach the top 10 there is not an easy matter. Xavier nodded. From the moment I had first learned about the Pill Gathering, I assumed that it would be attended by nothing but the best alchemists. No one there would be ordinary, and everyone there should be taken as serious competition. I promise I'll be careful. The First Elder waved his hands at the two. All right, it's already quite late, so you should rest here first regardless. I have helped to arrange a place for you to stay. Then you can come and discuss the matter of replenishing the heart flame in the Q training tower tomorrow. Xavier and Shin nodded. They bowed and said their thanks to Zun before departing from the meeting room for the night. Zun let out a soft sigh that he had been holding on to for a good portion of that evening's discussion. He muttered to himself, The Central Plains. I have not been there for many years, and I do really miss it. But such a place as that likely belongs to the young people now. By the time they had left the meeting room, the sky had already gone completely dark. Stars were flickering in the sky as a faint moonlight scattered down onto the earth. Xavier and Shin continued chatting a little after they left the meeting room, before finally parting. Xavier did as he was instructed and found the accommodations that Zun Qin had helped make for him. Xavier flung himself onto the soft bed that awaited him in his room. After dealing with the warriors from the Black Zone for such a long time and figuring out his next steps from there, he was understandably exhausted. Despite this, there was still a part of him that was excited. and that excitement glinted in his eyes. All of the information he had obtained about the cosmic heavenly flame had proved to be surprisingly joyous news to him. Hill Tower, Xavier muttered to himself as he settled into bed. I'm really excited to see this faction that so many alchemists regard as their holy ground. If I could make a name there for myself, Master Lao would be proud. I'm sure of it. I wonder if someone at the Pill Tower still remembers Master Lao, though I should keep the First Elder's warning in mind. He has always been reasonable, so I suppose he didn't warn me about the Central Plains for no reason. I bet there are even more powerful people than in the entire Empire of the Heavens and the Black Zone combined. Man, the continent of the heavens is really much bigger than I even imagined. Looks like I will need a more defensive tactic. Otherwise, it's pretty likely that I wouldn't be able to flee should I happen to meet with real danger. Xavier shook his head, tossing the exhaustion out of him. He then sat cross-legged on the bed and flicked his finger. A glow appeared from the ring on his finger that immediately turned into a pair of 10-foot-long bone wings in front of him. The bone wings' semi-transparent color was pleasing to his eye. There were spirited substances within the bones that caused the wings to be filled with an unusual life force and Q energy. Xavier turned away from the wings. He waved his hand, and a shining, glittering golden scroll appeared in it. This was the scroll that detailed the process of refining the wings. He opened it gently, and then carefully read the text on it. He made sure he didn't miss a single detail on it, taking about an hour in total. He frowned slightly as he rolled the scroll back up and put it into his storage ring, and then he sat there in silence for a moment. This is really something special, unlike most others of its kind. This one mainly relies on the quality of the materials used to create it to raise its speed. The refinement of such a thing would be more complicated than I had anticipated. The scroll has detailed a long list of supplemental materials to the monster wings, but I have a rich store that would be able to supply me with most of the ingredients that I need for the process. The main hindrance that I found was that I would be required to remove the remaining monster energy from within the monster's wings. It's not uncommon knowledge that the wings of winged monsters contain some of the remaining energy of the monster itself. If one wanted to create a flying D technique, one must first remove the remaining energy. This caused Xavier some concern because of the extraordinary size, energy, and strength of this particular monster. When he was dissecting the monster, he came into contact with the remaining Q energy within the bone wings. Although the contact had ended very quickly, Xavier could still sense the wild, fierce, violent energy. Removing such energies was very risky. If one were not careful, one could very easily find themselves being eroded. It could even leave a seed of fierceness within one's heart, resulting in a drastic personality shift. Xavier stared intently at the bone wings in front of him. It has been dead for years, yet its energy remains frightening. Thinking about how powerful this beast must have been during its lifetime makes my skin crawl. Xavier tightly clenched his fist, inhaled a deep breath, and let it out in a long sigh. If I am unable to even deal with the remnant of Q energy of a monster that has been dead longer than I can recall, then how can I hope to fight against the mysterious, unpredictable, and mighty Hall of Souls in the future? How could I even hope to negotiate with them to get the people I love back? Xavier's eyes and heart filled with determination. To get through this long journey, he had to start with a step, and that was fighting the remnant Q energy within the bone wings. Xavier inhaled deeply. Why am I having such difficulty with a pair of bone wings? He was beyond frustrated. He knew there was an issue with the bone wings, but he couldn't identify what was wrong. I'll just have to try again. Maybe a new approach. Come here, little wings. Gently called Xavier, trying to alleviate his frustration. He beckoned with his hand, and the bone wings descended, and finally, they hovered just in front of him. Let's see what my spiritual energy can do. Xavier waved his hand, and a seal formed. He then gently shut his eyes, and his powerful spiritual energy slowly spread out from between his brows. Eventually, the The spiritual energy gathered and then carefully moved outwards. It then surrounded the pair of bony wings. The moment his spiritual energy made contact with the bony wings, a deep, muffled explosion occurred within Xavier's mind. Suddenly, the whole world shifted. Xavier tried to control his mind, but it was lost to him. Inside his mind, Xavier was in a dusky world, void of any life. His spirit was suspended high in the sky. He frowned as his gaze swept over this darkened world, and he muttered, "Where am I? Is this inside the bony wings? Where is its remnant energy?" While Xavier looked around, the duskiness in the atmosphere moved. The air seemed to vibrate. Instantly, a gray air appeared and slowly spread. As the gray air gathered, a pair of blood-red eyes abruptly appeared and blinked back at Xavier. Xavier stepped back in surprise. Whoa, what is that? The blood-red eyes shot out red lights that focused on Xavier, and he could smell the stench of blood. It was filled with fierce violence, and it seemed to seep into the air around Xavier and, in fact, infect him. Xavier coughed, not just a little cough, but he violently coughed. His breathing became rough and heavy. "I think this gray air is filled with poison. If you inhale the air, it infects you. An invisible attack, that's what it is." Xavier calmed his mind. He dismissed all negative emotions, fear and anxiety that filled his body. Then he began to expel the poisonous gray air. His concentration was interrupted by a fierce roar. A fierce, beast-like roar reverberated from the gray air. It was violent and ferocious and terrifying to hear. Suddenly, the gray air surged towards Xavier from all directions. Xavier quickly maneuvered his spiritual energy to form a spiritual barrier around himself to protect him from the gray air. The gray air stopped flowing and started wriggling. Suddenly, it transformed into an enormous beast with red eyes glaring out at Xavier. It was terrifying to witness. Xavier couldn't yet identify the type of beast due to the still wriggling of the gray air, but its massive size only meant it was powerful. It let out another roar, and then, like a stampeding rhinoceros, came at Xavier at full tilt. It violently collided with Xavier's spiritual barrier. The collision of these two powerful energies created sparks and waves in the surrounding air. Xavier listened as his spirit moaned in a low and painful way. He was surprised that the moan didn't exit his lips, but he heard the pain inside his mind where the spirit resides. Xavier thought to himself, "Right now, I can feel I'm in a spiritual form. My spiritual energy is active in the outside world, and my inner soul is directly connected. If my spiritual energy is injured, my soul will also be injured in some manner." He maneuvered his spiritual energy to stabilize himself. At that moment, he realized that the gray air beast had impacted the spiritual barrier. The fierceness of the beast had seeped into the barrier. He identified the part of his spiritual energy that had been damaged and immediately moved new and fresh energy to that area to ensure the protection barrier was strong. The gray air shifted and attacked again. Once more, it collided with Xavier's spiritual barrier. His spirit moaned again in pain. He waved his hand to try to rid himself of the damaged spiritual energy. His gaze was gloomy as he looked at the gray air that wandered close by. "It's the remnant energy that's lodged in the bone wings. That's what is attacking me. Some remnant energy from the monster that once had these wings." Xavier heard his spiritual strength moan again. "I need to get rid of this remnant energy before I can use them. But how?" The two collisions had caused Xavier's spiritual energy to be greatly exhausted. On the other hand, the gray airflow, which seemed to possess some intelligence, did not show any sign of weakening. If this were to prolong, the one who would end up exhausted would definitely be Xavier. "It can't continue like this. It seems the beast is very strong and hard to damage. It's also very perceptive and smart. It challenges my tactics. If I'm not careful, it will exhaust my energy in no time. Xavier stared intently at the gray air that lingered around him. It feels like being stalked by a predator. As this thought lingered in his heart, the gray air shifted into the form of a rhinoceros and violently charged towards him. Xavier waved his hands and cried out, "Attack!" He brought forth his invisible flame of the fallen heart flame. It suddenly surged from within his spirit and completely wrapped around Xavier's body to protect him. Then, the gray air rhinoceros collided with the invisible flame. Immediately, a white flame rose, while a sharp, miserable cry of the rhino beast resounded. The gray air rhino gradually grew fainter before it completely disappeared. The surrounding gray air had been startled. It scattered in all directions and kept its distance from Xavier. "This is great. The fallen heart flame can burn through this remnant energy. I know that the fallen heart flame can harm spirits and illusionary substances. Clearly, this gray air is in that category." Xavier was thrilled as he saw the effect the heavenly flame had. He moved towards the gray air, but it quickly moved away. "What? You were so happy earlier. Why don't you come and attack me now? Did you get scared of a bit of fire?" Xavier flicked his finger, and the fallen heart flame that covered his body surged. The entire area suddenly became hot from the invisible flame. Xavier watched as the increase in heat made the gray air flow uneasily. It released a fearful roar. Xavier only laughed. "Regardless of how smart and powerful you were when you were alive, now you're just some remnant energy, without intelligence or body." He stared coldly at the gray air that had scattered. He waved his sleeves, and the fallen heart flame immediately transformed into many clusters of flames that shot toward the gray air. Xavier sensed that the gray air felt panicked and anxious upon seeing the clusters of heavenly heart flame attack. The gray air had met its equal, and it fled in all directions. Xavier flicked his fingers, and suddenly, 2 glowing eyes appeared in his bundles of flames. It was like an animal in the flames that stalked its prey. When it was ready, it attacked, and the clusters of flame suddenly opened mouths and swallowed all of the gray air like a snake. Xavier watched as the air appeared to be on fire. Eventually, all of the gray air had been burned away, and his clusters of flame returned to him. As the clusters of flame returned, Xavier realized with great joy that his spiritual energy had grown a little. He thought to himself, "The strengthening of one's spiritual energy is an extremely difficult task. The only ways to increase it would be to advance one's class or consume a natural treasure that would allow one's spiritual energy to grow stronger. My spiritual energy has just increased, but I'm not sure why. How can this be? What is the reason? It must be related to the gray air, but how? I do know that all of the negative energy has been removed from the gray air, so it feels like a health tonic for my spiritual energy." Xavier watched as the very last remnants of energy in the form of gray air were consumed, almost like food, by the fallen heart flame. The remnant energy hidden within the bony wings had been completely transformed into a spiritual tonic for Xavier. Xavier's spirit stood in the open sky. He lowered his head and looked at the spiritual body which suddenly had become visible to him. He grinned. "This is amazing, to be able to see my spiritual body like this." Xavier waved at his spiritual body, and his spiritual body waved back. "No way. I had no idea this would happen after refining a pair of bone wings. This is simply amazing. To think that dealing with this energy would make my spiritual energy so much stronger. It sounds too good to be true. And now that the bony wings have been refined, I can focus on crafting the wings." Xavier spent the next few days in a small chamber, refining the bone wings. It took him a lot of effort, but it was clearly worth it. Once refined, they looked like crystals when Xavier spread them for the first time. He laughed. "These wings are incredible. Unfortunately, They pushed my pair of eagle wings out of my body, but that's all right. In comparison to those eagle wings, these bone wings are much, much faster and more powerful. Xavier walked out of the chamber for the first time in many days. A warm and glaring sunlight seeped through the hallways. He blinked back at the sunlight. Finally, you've appeared. Xavier turned to see an elegant, white-robed figure sitting down the corridor beside a rock table. It was the doctor. It's good to see you too, Doctor. How are you? Have you been able to find your way around the inner circle since I've been gone? Yes, it's a beautiful place. Not only the scenery, but the people. They are all very open and gracious, supportive of the students and each other. I've never been to such a welcoming place. I've been on my own for much of my life. If I had trained here as a young student, well, I probably would be a very different person. Unfortunately, the woeful poison body of mine has meant I needed to spend time on my own, and sometimes it's lonely, replied the doctor. Sorry to hear that. Speaking of which, how has your woeful poison body been? Asked Xavier, genuinely concerned. It is fine. Sometimes it's difficult to suppress it, but I should be able to endure another year, or at least so I hope. I'm worried that if I can't control it by then, it may explode. I wonder if I should plan to travel far away, so no one loses their life. There was an anxious look in the doctor's eyes as she spoke. You would actually leave? Xavier asked, and raised an eyebrow. Of course I would leave, Xavier. I can't stay here, or in any town or city. And really I don't know when the woeful poison body is going to erupt, so I've thought about leaving now. Now? Xavier asked in shock. Yes, Xavier. I just can't be responsible for anyone's death. Don't you think that would be ironic? Me, a doctor, that tried to save lives, then killing thousands of people, sighed the doctor. Xavier saw her worry and fear. He knew he had to calm these, and he definitely didn't want her to leave. You have to remember, everything will be fine. You're very optimistic, Xavier. How? I have the juice of enlightenment. Now all I need is to find the final ingredient. Then we'll be able to control your woeful poison body, answered Xavier. Then you have great faith in finding that monster heart, don't you? Pointed out the doctor. Yes, I do. I promise I'll help you. Look, we actually figured out a way to secure the juice of enlightenment, didn't we? Xavier stated. Yes, we did, Xavier. So no more worries. We will make this happen. Just like everything else, I promise. All right, I believe you. She smiled at Xavier, and as she looked into his eyes, she suddenly remembered. Oh, I meant to tell you that First Elder Zune would like to see you when you're done with your refining work. You can find him in the meeting room. They're trying to find a solution regarding the Q training tower. Xavier nodded, and without wasting time, made his way there. The doctor decided to follow him as well. The door to the meeting room opened. The elders stood up when they saw Xavier enter the room. Well, well, look who's here after 2 days. Come and join us. First Elder Zune warmly welcomed Xavier as he crossed the room with the doctor. Xavier smiled and nodded as he joined the elders of the inner circle around the large table. He gratefully explained. Thank you so much for allowing me to take my time to work. It's been such a long time. The battles and travels have taken a toll on my alchemy work. I can't become a better alchemist without working on my refinement skills after all. I'm glad you found the peace and focus needed to work, but we're very glad you're here to discuss an important issue that concerns you, replied Zune. Me? Well, that can only be the heart flame of the Q training tower, remarked Xavier. That's right, Xavier, agreed the First Elder. Say the word and I'll do my best, First Elder. There's no need to rush, Xavier. Besides, we're hit with a different sort of problem. The First Elder pointed out. What sort of problem, First Elder? Xavier raised an eyebrow, concerned. Well, you and I know that you plan to travel to the Central Plains very soon. Given the great distance of the Central Plains, It's highly unlikely that you'll be able to return in 2 or 3 years to replenish the heart flame when necessary. Xavier nodded solemnly. He already figured. Yes, I know. I've been thinking about this issue too. Xavier, it is not your job to change, to run back and forth every 2 years to the inner circle. After all, it is kind of our fault that this happened to begin with. If we had done a better job at keeping the fallen heart heavenly flame contained, it wouldn't have put you into this situation. In any case, we've gathered here to find a solution to this issue. Xavier knit his brows together and asked, "What do you suggest, First Elder?" I'm sorry to say that there is a way, but it would involve you, and it won't be easy. Zun flicked his fingers over his storage ring. A strangely shaped crystal appeared on the table in front of Xavier. Zun pointed at the crystal and laughed. If you can believe it, this was created by a hall monitor of the inner circle. The hall monitor calls it a flame-gathering pot. Xavier moved closely to examine the crystal. A flame-gathering pot? Well, it doesn't look like a pot, observed Xavier. Zun laughed. That's exactly what I told the hall monitor. It doesn't look like a pot. Regardless, it will work, but it will be difficult. Why do you keep saying it'll be difficult, First Elder? Xavier asked. We need to insert an energetic thread from the real fallen heart flame into the pot, and then we will need to monitor it. As long as we are able to ensure that the pot is full of Q energy, then it will continue to produce the heart flame that we need, and you don't have to worry about replenishing it all the time, explained the First Elder. Xavier thought of this. It was a little complicated, and so he asked, This little pot will hold enough of the heart flame to keep the Q training tower working and can be replenished with Q energy? Is that right? Yes, but only if we use a thread from the original fallen heart heavenly flame and keep the pot filled with Q energy. Then the Q training towers will work. How can that be? Doesn't the Q training tower need power from the original fallen heart flame, not just a tiny thread floating in Q energy? Xavier was perplexed. You're right, Xavier. A thread is nothing like the power that's created from the original fallen heart flame, but we've discovered that it will be enough. It will have a level of power that will increase the training speed for our experts, and that's all that matters. However, there is a dark side to this. Do you know what it is? Asked Zun solemnly. Xavier looked at the elders around the table, who were looking at him as if he had just died. He inhaled deeply and searched his memory for an answer. Well, I imagine it can be dangerous, he replied. Yes, very dangerous. Splitting a thread of essence from the fallen heart flame can cause you a great deal of harm. In fact, it's guaranteed that you will be injured. I've been injured in the past, so this is nothing I'm not used to. Xavier laughed bitterly. Zun and the elders exchanged looks. Then the doctor spoke up. Is there any way to mitigate the injuries? Can we somehow create a pill or tonic that will help Xavier while splitting the thread? There may be, but we don't know for sure. At this point, all we can say is that Xavier will sustain significant injuries, and that he will need to recuperate for a very, very long time, informed the First Elder. Xavier and the doctor exchanged a look. How long will it take? A month or two at the most? There's something I have to do, and I'm running out of time, Xavier mentioned, silently thinking about the doctor's woeful poisoned body. I have to be honest, Xavier. It could be a very long time. Many, many months, perhaps. We just don't know. The doctor interrupted Xavier's thoughts and said to him, There is no way to rush your recuperation. You will have to rest as long as it takes your body, heart, spirit, and soul to recover. Xavier knew this was the doctor's way of giving him permission to take on this task for the inner circle. As he hesitated, the doctor added, It's important for the inner circle to ensure that the heart flame remains in place. And this way is best for everyone in the future. You will not need to return to replenish the flame. The doctor took a step back from the table. Xavier knew she had made up her mind on this issue. He stared at the strange crystal on the table. His loyalties were divided, and he needed to make the right decision for everyone. I really do feel responsible for this entire mess. The Fallen Heart Heavenly Flame is something that was originally owned by the Inner Circle. I know it fell into my hands, and that has caused a great deal of turmoil for the Inner Circle. Zun countered. Xavier, don't feel guilty. There is no need to blame yourself. You have a natural ability that no one else shares. I will remind you that the Inner Circle had to seal off the Fallen Heart Flame for many years. No one could tame it. You came along and you had such an affinity for the Fallen Heart Flame, and it was this gift of yours that allowed us to survive. It allowed us to save this academy. The eruption of the Heavenly Flame was imminent either way. We all were well aware of it, even before you arrived. Zun waved his sleeves and skillfully delivered the flame-gathering pot to Xavier. Keep this pot with you. When you have the time, please think about helping us. It doesn't have to happen right away. Zun gave Xavier a wink. He had figured out that Xavier needed time. Xavier smiled and nodded. He waved his hand to place the flame-gathering pot into his storage ring and thought, I'd like to resolve this matter permanently. It's been weighing me down for years, and I know it interferes with my training, but I do have to support the doctor right now too. The other elders saw Xavier take the pot and were pleased. Eventually, this would be resolved. Zun saw the doctor at the far end of the meeting room and pointed her out to Xavier. Listen, why don't you take the doctor out into the gardens? Show her around the Nanji Academy. Later, you can let me know if there is anything you need. Xavier and Zun walked over to the doctor. Our Nanji Academy welcomes experts from all over the world. You are more than welcome to train here as well, the first elder Zun said with a smile. The doctor was taken aback. Really? Would you actually trouble yourself with someone like me? I've never studied or trained. Absolutely. We would love to be troubled by you, laughed Zun. She gave Xavier a helpless look. He knew what was on her mind. It was the woeful poison body, and the threat of it erupting that was constantly looming above her. Xavier gave her a reassuring smile. I think it would be a great idea if you were to train here. You can become much stronger. Who knows how strong you'll become? Maybe you'll become a war king. The doctor's smile widened as she heard this. Well, in that case, perhaps I will trouble you in the future. I would love to stay and study here at Nanji Academy. It would be an honor, and I know Xavier would be pleased that you are here too. The first elder smiled. After the intense discussion, the atmosphere within the meeting room became relaxed. Quite a number of elders within the inner circle were old acquaintances of Xavier. They laughed and chatted for some time, when suddenly the door swung open and Xavier's brother Shi rushed in. He had a very stern look on his face. Everyone in the hall was stunned when they saw Shi's expression. Zun immediately frowned slightly and asked, What has happened? Shi's eyes wandered all around the room and found Xavier. He hesitated for a moment before saying in a deep voice, It's about the Demon Flame Valley. It seems that bastard Han Feng has asked the old demon to join him. The relaxed atmosphere of the hall suddenly became tense. Everyone seated there was very familiar with the Black Zone. They were clearly aware of how troublesome this demon of the Demon Flame Valley was. The demon of the Demon Flame Valley? Xavier asked, slightly taken aback. His true name is Master Lai Lang. He is the founder of the Demon Flame Valley. I don't know how old he is, but he is much older than even I am, and he is extremely protective of his own. Now that you have killed the 3 great elders of the Demon Flame Valley, this demon of the Demon Flame Valley is furious. The first elder Zun shook his head, looking very concerned. First elder, what do we do now? Given the demon's habit of avenging every grudge, He will likely turn his anger on the Nanji Academy. How can we hope to face him? An inner academy elder spoke with a solemn expression. The Demon Flame Valley and our Nanji Academy already have built up great hatred for each other over these few years. Since this old demon Lai Lang is the founder of the Demon Flame Valley, he should be aware of the conflict between both parties. However, he has never shown himself to resolve the issues between our factions. Is his fight with us or with Xavier alone? Perhaps that demon will really launch a campaign against all of us. Another elder mused. Zun nodded his head. Han Feng is the cause of all this trouble. Does he really think he can underestimate our Nanji Academy just because the headmaster is absent? If he really wants a fight, our Nanji Academy will oblige him. When the headmaster was here, the demon did not dare to offend our Nanji Academy. He waited until our headmaster was gone. He has always been a despicable coward, but I'm sure he knows that if he weren't, he would have gotten himself killed by now. That old bastard doesn't have many friends outside his valley. Another elder snorted with great disdain. From now on, the Nanji Academy will be on high alert. You should dispatch more spies to watch the Demon Flame Valley. Report any movements they make immediately. Since the demon of the Demon Flame Valley is unwilling to leave things be, I shall tell him that even if the headmaster is absent, this Nanji Academy will not back down. The first elder Zun cried out in a deep voice. There was an unusual anger and hatred on his face. She nodded. The Xiao Gate and the Nanji Academy were basically in the same boat. Any trouble that befell the Nanji Academy would mean the end of Xiao Gate. The demon of the Demon Flame Valley would definitely not let them off. The first elder's gaze glided over to Xavier and the doctor. He said, "The both of you should try your best to remain within the inner academy during the next few days. We will be able to take care of the situation should any sudden problem occur." Xavier nodded his head. "Naturally, I also played my part in all of this, so I will take responsibility for it." "Thank you, Xavier. Your cooperation is greatly appreciated. Now, we will wait for signs of activity from the demon of the Demon Flame Valley. That old fellow is becoming more and more arrogant. He does not have the power to destroy our Nanji Academy." Zun let out a cold laugh as fury leapt into his eyes. "I will not forgive this demon for everything he has done to our academy. During the past few years, many students have perished at the hands of the Demon Flame Valley. I remember each and every one of them. As the first elder, it is my duty to inform the parents or any other living relatives what has happened. Seeing all of the grieving parents and siblings, it was really heartbreaking. I vowed to put a stop to this. I will make sure to remind this old demon of who he is dealing with, so that none of our students will die at his hands ever again." The hall was quiet as they saw the usually calm elder's outburst of rage. Xavier and she exchanged a glance, their faces solemn. "It seems that this time, we are really going to face an impossible battle. After all, that demon of the Demon Flame Valley was at the very least a 6 or 7-star elite warlord. Stronger than the warlords even you have battled before, Xavier." Xavier nodded, bracing himself for the terrible danger ahead. After the discussion that day ended, the defense of the inner academy intensified. They placed restrictions on the comings and goings of the students. The students sensed something was going on and were very on edge. When they saw the tensed expressions of the elders, they quickly swallowed their questions. The law enforcement unit of the academy was out in force in the area around the academy and laid a thorough defensive line. Any person from the Black Zone who showed their face would be met with severe repercussions. Many factions within the Black Zone noticed the activity at the academy. Rumors flew everywhere about the big battle over the Juice of Enlightenment that had happened in the Black Zone and the recent activity of the Demon Flame Valley. Many whispers could be heard. "Did you hear? There will be a huge war between the Demon Flame Valley and the academy," someone uttered. "Really? So the academy finally had enough? It was about time," sighed someone else. "That is true. They say even the demon of the Demon Flame Valley decided to get involved," informed the first person. "The old demon wants to get involved? Man, must be serious then. He's usually just hiding in retreat," added another person. "It does seem serious. Maybe the headmaster will show up too," someone wondered. "The headmaster? That old guy hasn't been seen in years. He's just as much of a hermit as the old demon." The other person laughed. "Yes, that is true. But if he would show up, that old demon would not dare to launch an attack." The first person agreed. "You're right. The headmaster is an expert unlike any other. In any case, this will heat things up in the Black Zone. No matter the outcome of this battle, we should brace ourselves for this storm. It will be bad." In the meantime, Xavier and the others remained within the inner academy, strategizing. He drank many cups of tea with the First Elder, Lily, and the Doctor, discussing how they should handle the demon of the Demon Flame Valley.
"I wish we knew more about him so we could figure out his weakness,"
the Doctor mused, swirling the tea leaves in the bottom of her cup. "Unfortunately, he's been gone so long, I don't think anyone knows very much about him. We can't even be sure what level he is on right now. We can just estimate, based on the training speed he used to show. Maybe his training speed increased, and he already reached the level of a war king. But I don't want to think this has happened. It really would be the worst-case scenario for our academy. Facing a war king at our current strength, well, it would be suicidal." The First Elder smiled wryly. "You sound very confident that he has a weakness we could exploit. I myself am not so sure."
"Maybe his strength is exaggerated. He's targeting a bunch of students. He doesn't sound very strong to me,"
Lily interjected, taking a bite of a sashima cake. "That could be the case. However, we don't know what we're up against. I'm not inclined to underestimate him, regardless." Xavier shook his head. He tried to stay busy to keep from worrying. He would occasionally make a trip to the Steelgate faction and would help them refine pills. During his free time, he would hang out for a while in the Inner Academy's ingredient hall or the old training room. He was able to focus on training there, and he made more progress than he usually did. He felt a premonition of being about to advance, as if he were not that far away from breaking through to the 5th level of the high-level Q-Master class. His eyes wandered to the window, watching the students outside training, laughing, and playfully fighting. Lily and the Doctor watched him watch the students through the window and recognized the worry under his calm facade.
"We have a couple of elite warlords. I don't think the situation is completely hopeless,"
Lily insisted. "I hope you're right. But if everything I have heard is true, which we can't be sure of, then we haven't faced anyone as strong as the demon of the Demon Flame Valley before." Xavier frowned into his teacup. He took a sip of tea. He smiled as he watched the students battle. One of the students managed a decisive victory, and Xavier stood up to yell through the window and announce him as the winner. However, before he could announce the victor, his expression suddenly changed. He turned his head, and he stared intently at the horizon to the east. A large group of extremely powerful auras had suddenly appeared there, including one energy that was so strong, he felt his stomach drop. "They have arrived." The students had noticed something was happening and started murmuring amongst themselves while they followed Xavier's gaze towards the east. "Students of the Nanji Academy, have all of you forgotten your manners? Why is no one welcoming me? What does this useless old bastard of a headmaster teach you?" A thunderous voice rang out. The thunderous cry resounded mightily over the Inner Academy. The echo reverberated off the surrounding mountains, shaking everyone who heard it to their core. Students poured out of the building, into the yard, to watch the inevitable battle. The elders of the academy suddenly appeared from all over the Inner Academy. Xavier rushed out and shot into the sky as well, staring in the direction where the voice came from. His expression was solemn as he studied the sky in the direction where the cry originated from. He clenched his fist and muttered, the demon of the Demon Flame Valley. First Elder Zun exchanged looks with Xavier and the others below, before knitting his brows. Looks like this is it. I hope that combining our powers will be enough to drive him back. We must protect the school at all costs. Wind began to howl from all the corners of the sky. Within a few seconds, a handful of dark figures appeared in the eastern sky. Their energy is very strong, Xavier called to First Elder Zun. His eyes swept over this group of 20 figures. His gaze stopped on two people right at the center of the group. Han Fang, he really will not give up, Xavier muttered.
We took care of him last time. We can take care of him again, Lily snarled, squaring her shoulders, ready for the fight. The other person in the center of the group was an old man who wore a bone-yellow robe. The old man's face was skeletal, and his dark eyes had a fiery glow in them. His eyes indifferently watched the inner academy below. With every move of his hands, there was a faint ripple in space. Xavier's eyes narrowed. I have never seen someone so powerful. That must be the so-called demon of the Demon Flame Valley. The students gazed up at him, terrified, but trying to hide it. His face betrayed no expression as he surveyed the school, Xavier, and his friends, and also the students on the ground below. First Elder Zun frowned and looked at the old man. After so many years, I had not expected to see you in person again. I suppose I should be glad. Finally, we can settle things. First Elder Zun, old friend. It is unexpected that you have also advanced to the Warlord class. When I met you, you were merely an elder at the peak of the high-level Q-Master class. I did not expect you would go much further in your old age. The demon gave a subtle smirk. You should know the reason I have come today. Hand over the young man called Xavier. He killed 3 great elders of my Demon Flame Valley. I must seek repayment for this debt. Otherwise, how will my Demon Flame Valley keep its reputation within the Black Zone? First Elder Zun cried out, You damned demon! Xavier killed those men in self-defense. They attacked him. Should he just allow them to kill him and our students? I don't care about the circumstances. All I know is that Xavier has killed 3 elders of my Demon Flame Valley. The demon waved his sleeves and laughed. I will not waste my breath with you. I demand to speak to the headmaster of your academy. The first elder huffed. We both know Headmaster Mang is not here. I do not think you would dare threaten the school if you thought he was here. A fierce glint immediately flashed across the demon's face when he heard First Elder Zun's mocking tone. First Elder Zun, you shouldn't think that I am afraid of Headmaster Mang. You do not have the power to speak to me that way. If you do not hand over Xavier, this academy will fall today. The gathered inner academy elders sneered at his threat and his arrogance. What a shameless old man. He sure earned the title of demon. One of the elders huffed. Another elder agreed. Absolutely. I always wondered why they called him the demon of the Demon Flame Valley, but now I feel stupid for wondering about this in the first place. While the elders were murmuring, suddenly, a clear laugh echoed through the sky. Heh, you came all this way just to see me? Xavier rushed through the sky, stopping next to the first Elder Zun. The doctor and Lily closely followed after Xavier revealed himself. They stood next to him and glared at the demon. You are Xavier. The demon's dark and cold gaze turned to Xavier. Yes, I am Xavier. Your first elder and the other 2 died at my hands. The juice of enlightenment has also landed in my hands. Xavier smiled. Han Fang threw a dark look at Xavier. The savage smile in his eyes was filled with murderous intent. The demon cocked his head. One could see neither joy nor anger on his aged face. His demon-like glowing eyes stared at Xavier. Are you going to come with me by yourself? Or should I tear this academy down to the ground and kill every last student? You damned demon! You are not in your Demon Flame Valley.
If you dare to attack this inner academy, it will cost you your life. First Elder Zun cried out in a stern voice. Ha! You may indeed be worthy of being the first elder of the inner academy, but do you really think that you are anywhere close in strength to Headmaster Mang? The demon let out a sinister laugh. If you really insist on intervening today, I do not mind teaching you a lesson in front of all the students. Maybe this way, they can finally learn something in this cheap excuse of an academy. Xavier spoke up before the first elder could. Let's stop these little games and cut to the chase. You do not care about those pathetic men who challenged me and then could not live up to that challenge. They're just your excuse. I think that your motive is the juice of enlightenment. You do not look well. You look like you have one foot in the grave already. I think you need the juice for yourself. The demon's eyes suddenly turned cold. What a sharp tongue. I think it deserves to be cut out. His fingers moved, and 5 sharp Q-energy blasts shot from his fingers toward Xavier's face. The doctor reacted without hesitation. Q-energy poured from her like lava. The gray-colored Q-energy shattered the 5 sharp Q-energies within the blink of an eye. Ugh! The doctor trembled when the 5 sharp Q-energy blades came in contact with her energy. She emitted a soft muffled groan before flying a few steps back. Xavier's face fell when he saw the doctor being forced back. Are you all right? I'm fine. His strength is extremely great. His Q energy contains a frigid chill. With your current strength, you would likely suffer a serious injury if you were to be struck by it. The doctor whispered solemnly. What? The demon looked stunned that his attack failed. He turned to the doctor. You have reached the warlord class at such a young age. How unexpected. Don't tell me that it is actually easy to rise to the warlord class nowadays. Old man, do you really think that everyone takes as many years as you to level up? Xavier taunted. The corner of the demon's eyes twitched. Fury flashed in his eyes. His talent was not insignificant, or he would not have reached this level. However, compared to Headmaster Mang and some others of his generation who had left the Black Zone, he could be considered the last rank. Headmaster Mang had long since become an elite war god, where the demon was still lingering in the warlord class. In short, Xavier had hit a nerve. You should not listen to this young upstart. He cannot fight you. Once you capture him, pull out all his teeth and cut his tongue. We will see just how he will argue with you then. Han Fang spoke with a smile. He glanced at Xavier, then at First Elder Zun. You can leave the First Elder Zun to me. Xavier and the white-clad warlord will be no match for you. With your ability, it should not be difficult to finish them off. A thread of cunningness flashed through Han Fang's eyes. He was afraid to take on Xavier and the doctor again himself. He wanted to leave them to the demon. The demon nodded. Murderous intent surged within his dark eyes. Gray Q energy, the color of clouds laden with snow, began to roil around his body, which was more skin and bones than anything. Sensing the dark and murderous intent from the demon, the many elders in the inner academy immediately became cautious. Powerful Q energy flowed within their bodies as they prepared to fight at any moment. The many students of the inner academy below were speechless. They were full of admiration for Xavier. I wish I could become strong enough to mock a warlord. Man, could you imagine? Some other student shook his head. No, that does sound unbelievable, but we shouldn't get too excited. It looks really bad for Xavier and the others. The other student furrowed his brows. Why would you say that? The student shrugged. As far as I understood it, that demon from the Demon Flame Valley trained for many, many years. About as many as our headmaster. Xavier is powerful, but still young, and probably does not have as much experience. So are his friends. Do you really think they would be able to fend this demon off? First Elder Zun's expression darkened as he sensed the gradual rise of murderous intent from the demon. It seemed that this old fellow would insist on spilling blood for revenge. Be careful, Zun whispered to Xavier. The power of the demon is deep and unpredictable. Even with the doctor's help, you will have difficulty contending with him. He is not like any opponent you have faced before. Xavier nodded. I'll be careful, and I'll make sure that this coward will never threaten our academy ever again. I do not think the masters from my Demon Flame Valley want to attack, because they are still afraid of Headmaster Mang. As long as the academy students and the inner academy's elders do not intervene, I will tell them to hold off. However, I must take Xavier's life. The demon's gaze swept over the many elders behind the first Elder Zun and the densely packed students below. After what he did, I will not let him live. Give him to me and spare your own lives. Screams rose from the students below.
Go get lost, you damned demon! We would never allow Xavier to be handed over,
someone cried out. Another bunch of students chimed in.
Yeah, we would rather fight you ourselves than hand him over, you old bastard!
The demon turned away from the first Elder Zun. His sinister gaze focused on Xavier. I heard that you can contend with some elite warlords with just your high-level Q-Master strength. However, as far as I'm concerned, none of them were as powerful as I am. Let's see what you and your friends can do. Zun watched the demon. He was about to make a move, when suddenly, Han Fang's laughter rang out. First Elder Zun, I am your opponent. Don't get distracted here, unless you are too scared to face me. A cold smile surfaced on Zun's face as he looked at Han Fang. Han Fang, you seem to be under the wrong impression that you beat me last time. Your confidence is unearned, and when the headmaster returns, he will hear about what you've done. He won't let you go off scot-free. I can promise you this much. Han Fang's face contorted with rage. First Elder Zun, that threat means nothing to me. Headmaster Mang has not been back for over a decade. Who knows if he is even still alive? In any case, we could always expand the battleground and take on the students as well. The masters from the Demon Flame Valley are not just here for moral support. Han Fang laughed. Only a coward threatens children. Zun snarled at Han Fang. Zun turned to the inner academy elders behind him. All of you only need to pay attention to that group of people. There is no need to be worried about me. Keep an eye on the students, and be ready to defend them if things go sideways. The elders swore they would protect the students. They formed a defensive line beneath the battle in the sky, and watched the dark figures that accompanied Han Fang and the demon. First Elder Zun, we all know you are not as confident as you pretend to be. Han Fang laughed. I had you almost begging for mercy last time we met, old man. Zun ignored Han Fang's words. He flew forward. A powerful Q energy surged out of his body in all directions. Under this energy, the space around him became distorted. Darkness surged into Han Fang's eyes as he sensed this vast energy. I will not disappoint you. Han Fang flapped his sleeves, and a Q energy that was not the least bit weaker than Zun's Q energy leaped out. The many students huddled in the courtyard below felt their hearts shudder. Was this the strength of an elite warlord? Just the energy that radiated from them was sufficient to cause the Q energy within their bodies to tremble. What would they do if he turned his attention to them? They were like ants beneath his feet. While Han Fang and Zun battled, the demon walked through the empty air and stopped 20 feet in front of Xavier and the doctor. His serene, ghost flame eyes stared at the two of them. Are the both of you attacking together, or will you take turns? The doctor's pretty face was cold as the demon taunted them. Her hands extended from her sleeves. Her 5 long fingers were gently curled up, and dense grayish-purple Q energy surged from her body in all directions. Her demonic gray-purple eyes glared at the demon before turning her head to Xavier. I will do it. You will definitely be badly injured if you get struck by an attack. Xavier shook his head. We fight together. Relax. I possess my own defensive abilities. Don't get distracted worrying about me. He appears to have a cold Q energy. Since mine is fire-based, I might be able to gain the upper hand with the help of the heavenly flames. Xavier turned his head to Lily. You should not intervene. The opponent this time is not like the ones we fought before. Do you understand?
I can take care of myself,
Lily argued. Please, Lily, Xavier called back. Hearing the fear in Xavier's voice, Lily became downcast. She looked up to argue, but upon seeing the solemnness in Xavier's face, she nodded and backed off. The doctor pointed her 10 long fingers at the demon. Her fingernails immediately extended by a foot. They glinted grayish-purple color and emitted a rotting flesh scent. Well, are you done having your little huddle? The demon crossed his arms over his chest. His eyes jumped between Xavier and the doctor. A gray-colored glow suddenly cut through the air and shot over toward him. Ah! The demon let out a cold laugh. Dark, cold Q energy surged out from his body. The gray-colored glow suddenly shattered upon contact with the black cold air, falling to the ground as shards of ice. I am surprised that a skillful person like you plays with poison. The demon's shriveled hand was covered in ice crystals.
There are many things about me that will surprise you.
The doctor lunged at the demon. Her nails targeted his throat. The sharp fingernails stopped when they made contact with the black-colored air surrounding the demon. The doctor could not advance further. The demon smiled strangely at the doctor from behind the dark ice crystals. He suddenly disappeared. The doctor's face changed.
Xavier, look out! He is targeting you!
The doctor's cry had just left her mouth when the demon appeared in front of Xavier. His skeletal face smiled sinisterly at Xavier as his fingers mercilessly struck at Xavier's throat. The demon's claw, which carried a cold and dark air, rapidly grew as Xavier beheld it. His expression did not change much, with the corner of his mouth slowly curling into a cold smirk. The forming seal that Xavier had prepared made itself known. A pair of 10-foot wide bone wings shot out from Xavier's back. They started flapping and sent out wild gusts of wind and thunderous booms as he sped off. The sharp ghost claw flashed to where Xavier's throat had been just a moment before. The demon narrowed his eyes as he swiped through the air instead of Xavier. He let out a cold snort, allowed the seal in his palm to dispel, and turned to look for Xavier. No wonder my elders died at your hands. That level of speed is something even some of the most elite warlords could not hope to match, much less those three. I like a good challenge, so I do hope you'll continue to put up a fight. If you're as weak as I've measured, and my measurements are never wrong, then I am going to be disappointed at how quickly you will die, and I will take it out on your friends. Xavier's 10-foot-long bone wings flapped in the sky to keep him suspended there, sending wind and thunderous booms off as they went. The wings were nearly crystal clear. Sunlight shone down onto them and scattered throughout the sky. Xavier is so dramatic sometimes. Hal laughed bitterly to Ming and Layla as he rubbed the cold sweat off of his forehead. Ming nodded as she watched Xavier in the sky, biting her lip from worry. Layla broke her silence, her face remaining solemn.
His chances of victory against the old demon seem quite low. Hal, get ready. If anything horrible should happen, you should intervene.
So if he dies, I should throw my corpse onto the pile. Got it, Hal said and saluted.
Joke all you want. I know we won't be able to do much else.
Layla rolled her eyes. So now it's we, Hal snorted.
Yes,
Layla confirmed. Well, thank you for your sacrifice too, even if it was delayed. Now Hal was the one rolling his eyes.
I know that we can't harm the demon, even if we join forces, but we should be able to delay him a little, to give Xavier time to escape or recover.
Layla assessed the situation carefully. Hal nodded. His hand gripped the blood-red heavy sword on his back. I will not hesitate for even a moment if he needs me to intervene on his behalf. The doctor flashed, and she appeared at Xavier's side. She looked at the demon with caution.
He's even more crafty than I had expected him to be.
The demon, for his part, remained largely unfazed. He calmly watched Xavier and the doctor. Although he was flying in the air, it looked like he was stepping toward them. Cold black air around him grew denser and denser. The doctor was caught off guard.
He is at least 3 stars more highly ranked than I am. Even with my woeful poison body, I don't know if I can make up for that gap.
She twisted herself into a line of white light that shot explosively at her foe. She knew she was out of options. All she could do was face him head on. The demon laughed coldly as he took in the sight of the doctor shooting toward him. Cold black air lingered on his fingertips. Then, he flicked them at the doctor. Black ice spikes appeared and shot towards the doctor. The doctor's eyes widened as she saw the spikes. She waved her sleeves, and waves of grayish-purple Q energy surged out, immediately twining together to form a wall in front of her. The spikes shot towards her like lightning. The pellets collided with the wall like bullets. The wall was too powerful for them, so they vaporized into mist. The demon didn't waste any time. In a mere moment, he summoned a 10-foot-long pitch-black ice sword. The corner of the demon's mouth lifted slightly into a cold sneer. Explode! The ice sword trembled briefly and exploded, shattering the doctor's Q energy wall. The doctor was startled, but not startled enough to let this attack go without a response. She withdrew as quickly as she could, but it was not quick enough, and she was struck by many of the ice blades. They cut through her skin, leaving lines of fresh blood where her clothes had been split. The demon, seeing his latest attack had drawn blood, extended his hand and called the bloody ice blades back to him. They transformed into clouds of cold black mist, and he took all of them into his own body. The demon then turned his head and noticed Xavier making or forming a seal. It had a crystal glow. The demon could sense extraordinary strength within it. Xavier waited for the demon to make eye contact, then released his attack. Divine Ocean Seal! The green Q energy that was visible in the palm of Xavier's hand became brighter and brighter. Upon seeing this incredible energy, the demon couldn't help but laugh at this surprise. Wow, you're faster and stronger than I expected. My measurements on you were wrong, and they are never wrong. Impressive. You are a mere high-level Q-master, so you should not be able to handle such a formation seal. Never mind use it. Han was right about you. Good Q energy and great strength. But if you want to win with just that, kid, then you are dreaming and need to wake up to the reality of your situation. The seal in Xavier's hand came to a stillness. The demon laughed coldly and viciously. With a slight flip of the bone wings on his back, Xavier prepared himself to dodge an attack at any moment. And even as he did this, he let out a cry and threw the seal at the demon. The green energy slowly escaped from Xavier's hand. The air around Xavier fluctuated wildly. As soon as it escaped his hand, the energy started to shake, then disappeared. Only the keenest of observers would be able to see a tiny green light penetrate through the air and shoot toward the demon. The demon, for his part, felt insulted. Humph. That sort of sneaky tactic might be able to catch an ordinary expert off guard, but you will have great difficulty getting it past me. I see it there, as plain as day. But here, I will do you this favor. Though I see it coming, I will not dodge it. As impressive an attack as it is still coming from an unimpressive attacker. You are a mere high-level Q-master, and though you forget yourself, I will not let you forget that one fact. An incredibly bright green light shot out, causing many of the observers to shut and shield their eyes in pain. But even taking this into account, the amount of energy within the seal was hidden, so no one knew what to expect from this. The crystal-forming seal that had so suddenly erupted also changed the expression of the demon, making him tremble ever so slightly. Sent out by nothing but a passing thought, a cold, Black air surged from his body in all directions. The glaringly bright green light hung in the sky like a sun. It was quiet and still for a moment before it suddenly shrunk. And then, an earth-shaking energy explosion resounded like thunder. This explosion caused everyone's ears to ring, and some even became dizzy. By the time they had recovered enough to lift their heads, all they could see was an enormous green mushroom cloud forming. There was no sign of the demon. They concluded that he was being wrapped up by this hot green energy. It was, after all, more frightening and violent and energetic than they could comprehend. The entire inner circle had become much quieter. They looked at the striking green energy mushroom in the sky. Their respect and fear for Xavier rose exponentially. Xavier covered his mouth to quickly and quietly cough twice. God, I hope no one noticed that. Is my face pale? My face feels pale. Okay, so the seal took a lot of Q energy out of me, but it didn't take all of it, so that's still better than last time. That's a wonderful sign of how much I've improved. The doctor suddenly appeared beside Xavier, though she kept her gaze fixed firmly on the mushroom cloud. Be careful. Although this attack is powerful, it's nearly impossible to beat such a powerful person with only one move. Xavier nodded. This demon is not some mere ordinary old warlord. He is a 7-star warlord. The enormous mushroom cloud finally scattered off. Xavier and the doctor clenched their fists with grim determination in anticipation of the fight ahead of them. There was a cloud of black energy swirls that became pale and disappeared. A moment later, everyone could confirm that the demon was still standing. He was not visibly hurt. His clothing was still clean, and his hair remained unmussed. Is this your trump card then? That's just sad. You should give up before you embarrass yourself even further. The demon's shriveled hands withdrew into the sleeves of his robe. No one noticed. He stared with ferocious, murderous intent at Xavier. Then, with a sudden tremble, he immediately vanished. No one could immediately tell where he had gone to. Xavier flapped his wings violently so he could get a better vantage point on where the demon had gone. The instant he vanished, a giant ghost claw containing a cold, black energy extended from the sky and grabbed at nothing. Again he evades my grasp. What a slippery brat. Do you want to show me up? It's all the more fun when I finally catch you. His tirade on Xavier was interrupted by a sharp force with a fishy scent. The demon let out a cold snort as he sensed an attacker approaching him from behind. He turned his body and waved his hands, colliding with the outstretched palms of a woman. A soul-stirring energy ripple surged out from the palms like floodwater. The two human figures had shaken together and then immediately departed. The demon's shoulders simply and merely shook, while the doctor's face had gotten worryingly pale. She was no match for the demon in a head-on collision. It was exactly as she had suspected it would be. The demon trembled more and more noticeably as he turned back around toward Xavier. He rushed at him in full force. Xavier was surprised to behold such a sight. His wings hurriedly flapped while a glaring lightning glow flickered underneath his feet. He planned to leave an afterimage for the demon that would be generated with each successive flap of his wings to trip him up and delay him with the decoy. But the demon was tearing the afterimages into nothingness too quickly. The doctor's expression changed ever so slightly as she watched Xavier. She gritted her teeth as her hands formed yet more seals. The demon continued giving Xavier chase, only for Xavier to teleport away. It continued in this way for several volleys. Giving up on this particular chase, the demon then turned his attention to the doctor. The doctor had wanted to fight the demon, but Xavier had not wanted that for her safety. And then an idea struck him like a bolt out of the blue. Help me stop him. What? Huh? The doctor was confused. Hang on. It would be easier to discuss this face to face. And with that, He used his 10-foot-wide bone wings to get to the doctor and got her away from the demon just as he had launched another ice attack in her direction, before getting her to whatever could resemble privacy in this wide-open battlefield. Okay, this isn't great, but it will have to do. I promise we will stop him. Just listen to me and wait for my sign. You need to distract him to buy me some time. Although the doctor felt some doubt in her heart, all she did was nod her head.
I will help you buy sufficient time. I'm not sure how long I can hold him off, though.
Xavier nodded and gently exhaled. He stared at the demon before he flapped his wings and slowly withdrew. He rejoiced that he had successfully refined the skybird wings before this battle. He might not be able to flee far enough from the demon's vicious attacks. The demon's eyes turned cold when he saw Xavier move back. He swung his sleeves, and a dark black ice awl shot toward Xavier like lightning. A corrosive grayish-purple Q energy shot over and violently collided with the black ice awl, melting it.
Try fighting me.
The doctor's emotionless eyes bore into the demon. Your strength may have suddenly increased, but you were at the very most able to contend with a 5-star warlord. I, on the other hand, have already long entered the 7-star warlord level, smirked the demon.
You seem pretty sure of yourself.
The doctor's lips curled into a sneer. She twisted her hands, emitting purplish gray Q energy, and twisting it until it formed 2 squirming gray and purple snakes, with enormous fangs dripping venom. The snakes launched themselves at the demon. You think your little pets concern me? The demon flicked his finger, and cold air flowed towards the snakes, transforming into a couple of sharp ice spikes. Grayish-purple poison fog shot out of the snakes' savage mouths. The sharp ice spikes dissolved into nothing, and they appeared in front of the demon within an instant. They widened their large mouths, and 2 bright red flames suddenly shot out. The demon waved his sleeves as his eyes locked onto the flames, forming a mere smooth ice cube. The red flames sizzled and steamed the moment they made contact with the ice mirror, melting it. However, the flames fizzled out just before they made it through the thick ice, leaving behind a rusty smear. Seeing the doctor's attack had failed, the demon smiled sinisterly, pulling the ice shield the red flames had melted back into his body. 2 black ghost hands emerged from his robes and grabbed the enormous gray and purple snakes, tearing them to shreds. The doctor smiled strangely. Her delicate hand formed a seal.
My blood is poisonous. You should have thought twice before absorbing that ice that was contaminated with it.
Your blood? Poisonous? The demon's face betrayed some fear. The corner of his mouth trembled, and cold Q energy suddenly surged out of his body in all directions.
You can't control your Q energy as well now, can you? The poison is already taking effect.
The doctor smiled wider. The demon twisted and writhed as he forced the Q energy from his body. Your poisons are useless against me. This will not kill me. The surface of the demon's body was covered by a black ice crystal. Bright red threads wormed their way through these icy crystals. From the looks of it, he was relying on his powerful Q energy to expel the poisonous blood from his body. The doctor was not surprised that the demon was able to force out the poisonous blood. Such poison might work against an ordinary Q master, but not against such a powerful elite warlord.
I hope Xavier is ready soon,
she thought to herself. The doctor clenched her hand, and Q energy swiftly surged out of her body, and she appeared in front of the demon. Her hand rose. The demon needed to divide his strength to force out the poisonous blood and fend off the doctor's attack.
Try another taste of my poison,
the doctor snarled, throwing another burst of purplish-gray Q energy at the demon's face. Unfortunately, it occurred just then to the demon that she was trying to stop him from seeing what Xavier was doing. The demon's eyes drifted to Xavier. Fear filled his eyes when he saw a green and an invisible flame twisting in front of Xavier. He had already heard from Han Fang that Xavier was in control of at least one heavenly flame. Its strength was terrifying. Xavier gently flapped the bone wings on his back as he struggled to summon his heavenly flames. "I'm not sure this is going to work," he mused to himself. The green-white heavenly flame, merged with two kinds of heavenly flames, does not pose much of a threat to an expert like the demon. Xavier exhaled. The white fire seal between his brows glowed. A dense white flame slowly drifted out before landing in front of him. At this moment, he could only rely on Master Lao's powerful white heavenly flame. Scalding hot air blasted across the sky, hitting everyone in Xavier's periphery. Even with Q energy covering the surface of their bodies, they felt the heat. Xavier studied the three clusters of flame with a solemn expression and did not hesitate. The three clusters of flame began to collide under his control. The demon became concerned when he sensed the natural energy that had suddenly swept across the sky. He clenched his hand and opened his mouth, and a bright red ice cube shot out of it, filled with viscous blood. It burst apart, and the blood fell from the sky. The face of the doctor fell when she saw that the demon had rid himself of the poison so quickly. Before she had the chance to withdraw, he threw a lance of black ice at her. She was unable to dodge in time. The doctor paled and staggered back, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. She struggled to steady herself. "Your strength is no match for mine. I will give you one last chance. I will not kill you if you turn around and leave," the demon snarled. The doctor wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Her face was icy cold. Without replying, her body flashed, and she once again rushed forwards. Murderous intent surged in the demon's eyes when he saw the doctor lunge toward him. "Are you really that foolish, you stupid little girl?" Terrible Q energy ripples formed when the two figures met, and a thunder-like explosion immediately sounded in the sky. Meanwhile, the three-colored merged heavenly flame in Xavier's hand was finally forming. It was the strongest attack that Xavier could summon. This might kill the demon, Xavier thought to himself, filling with hope for the first time since the battle had begun. The three-colored green-white heavenly flame was Xavier's trump card. With his current strength, he could only use it once before it would exhaust him completely. He only had one chance. If the heavenly flame did not kill the demon, Xavier was toast. The demon would kill him, destroy the Naji Academy, and probably kill all of his friends. Meanwhile, the doctor took another one of the demon's attacks. She coughed up more blood. "I can't hold him off much longer," the doctor shouted to Xavier. Xavier's face twitched when he looked at the doctor and the demon, who was smiling ferociously. "Leave her alone!" Xavier screamed. The demon grinned menacingly. "And what if I won't?" A dangerous spark lit up in Xavier's eyes. "Then you will die!" Xavier suddenly had an idea. He inhaled a deep breath, opened his mouth slowly, and a grayish-brown flame poured out. This cluster of flame was the life-transforming flame that Xavier had snatched from Fang Yan and the other two elders. Although it was not a genuine heavenly flame, it was still very powerful. If I merge it with the three heavenly flames, maybe that will be enough to take that demon down, Xavier thought. Although he would lose half of the life-transforming flame as a result, it was better than losing his life. "You've lived too long, demon!" Xavier launched himself toward the demon and the doctor. A blast of hot wind howled across the sky the instant the life-transforming flame merged with the green, white, and translucent heavenly flames. A powerfully destructive energy was born. In the distance, two black figures were in mid-battle. They were hit by the violent waves of energy and viciously shaken and injured. They quickly took a few steps back to try to regain their footing. Both fighters groaned in pain. This was First Elder Zun and Han Fang. They had been fighting for some time, and it showed. Upon closer look, First Elder Zun had lost energy and was in a weaker position after fighting intensely with Han Fang for so long. The wave of violent energy still shook the two of them, even after they had used their Q energy to stabilize themselves. It was obvious that First Elder Zun was having difficulty controlling it. A surging Q energy lingered around him, and a whistling sound could be heard. His robes moved without the presence of any wind as he tried to stabilize himself. First Elder Zun wiped a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth as he stared at Han Fang. "What are you looking at?" "Well, well, it looks like the First Elder of the Nanji Academy really is old and washed up," mocked Han Fang. He had completely stabilized after the violent energy attack, unlike First Elder Zun. "You are no better, old Han. After being caught by the Hall of Souls, you're neither human nor a ghost. It seems to me you're at best half dead," calmly retorted First Elder Zun. Han Fang's face twitched with rage. Cold, killing intent surged out of his eyes like floodwater. "Half dead. I believe that's how you'll feel after I destroy and defeat you in front of all your beloved students." Han Fang's sleeves shook, and a powerful, hot Q energy surged in all directions. It swept across the sky and struck First Elder Zun hard, suppressing his energy. First Elder Zun lost his breath with the energy's impact. He saw the other elders from the inner circle move toward him to intervene, but he held up his hand to caution them to stay. "Well, old fool, I've waited a long time to kill an elite warlord. You'll be my first." Han Fang then stretched himself up, making himself look taller. First Elder Zun inhaled deeply, and his Q energy surged. Suddenly, another energy could be sensed by the two men. Han Fang looked to his left and right, trying to identify the source of the new attack, but there was no one to be seen. Before he realized what was going on, a destructive and mighty energy wave exploded in the sky. Fighters everywhere paused as they sensed the horrific and violent energy that had been unleashed. Some fighters turned white with fear as they sensed the utter viciousness of the energy. Han Fang and the First Elder Zun violently trembled as the destructive wave of energy hit. They looked up to see a black-robed young man with glistening bone wings appear in the distance. The sound of muffled thunder could be heard as he flew towards them. This was Xavier, and hovering in front of him was a three-colored flame that took on the form of a massive fire lotus. The fire lotus was dazzling as it was shimmering in its three colors. However, Han Fang and First Elder Zun sensed that beyond the surface, its beauty held a destructive energy of horrific force. Han Fang's face was white and withdrawn. Upon seeing Xavier, he grew angry. He tightened his fists, preparing for battle. Xavier sensed Han Fang's killing intent. With the dazzling and destructive fire lotus hovering in front of him, Xavier threw a violent look at Han Fang. Han Fang felt an electric shock run through his body. It was as though a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. He was frozen with fear. He thought to himself, "If Xavier throws that fire lotus at me, I'll not live to see dawn." The killing intent in Han Fang's eyes disappeared as he switched from battle mode to diplomacy. He smiled his ugly smile, trying to make amends, and said to himself, "I know that Xavier will probably throw the lotus fire at the demon of the Demon Flame Valley, but this young man is my sworn enemy, and he may decide that I'm the better target, so it's best to be respectful and live another day." Xavier watched as Han Fang shook and quivered. Then, he quickly shifted focus to the new flame, flickering in the fire lotus that hovered in front of him. Although the life-transforming flame was not a genuine heavenly flame, its strength was extraordinary. Moreover, the merger of flames, life-transforming flame and the angry lotus flame created a new and wildly violent energy. Xavier thought to himself, I need a name for this new flame. It is beautiful and deadly. A very good combination. When I created the new flame, it required a little something as a catalyst. I used the life-transforming flame as that catalyst. Merging the life transformation flame into the three-colored heavenly flame was a huge risk and danger. But I've been through many life and death experiences in the past. Each time I've been lucky enough to escape death. I'm fortunate to have a spiritual strength that far surpasses many alchemists of the same tier. I will call it the extermination flame. He grinned. Being the creator, Xavier knew everything there was to know about the fierce power of this flame. He was still wary. He would be the first person to die if anything went wrong, he thought. A chaotic fire percolates within the extermination flame. There is a small seeping of energy, and it's difficult to keep it under control. I know that I have to keep the extermination flame at an equilibrium. I must be careful, or I'll die. Regardless, I do have some control, and now it's time to attack. Xavier focused on the demon, who could only shiver and snarl under his destructive and powerful gaze. He moved the dazzling extermination flame over the demon. At this moment, the demon was mortified and remorseful. He didn't expect that a mere high-level Q-master would actually be able to unleash such a frightening energy. Initially, he thought he should be able to kill Xavier with one hand in a matter of minutes. He was devastated as he realized that this was not the case. The demon's voice waved with fear as he quietly surrendered, saying, I apologize, dear Mr. Xavier. I did not want to cause so much trouble. I really was an idiot, and I will leave now. Everyone heard the fear and horror within the demon's hoarse voice. They all trembled at the thought of Xavier having such infinite power. The students in the crowd braved the fierce and fearsome Q energy to steal looks at the legendary Xavier from the inner circle and their beloved Steelgate faction. The image of this young man fighting against the demon would be burned into their memories forever. Xavier stared coldly at the demon, but then a white-robed figure caught his eyes. He saw the pretty face of the doctor was white with fear as she wiped a trace of blood from the corner of her mouth. She had been hurt. Xavier smiled at the doctor and nodded to her as she locked eyes with him. His smile caused the heart of the demon to sink. He knew he must leave right away, and so he turned to go. Xavier called out to him, "Where do you think you're going? I just formed this attack. It took me a lot of effort. I don't want it to go to waste." The demon wanted to defend himself, but it was too late. The dazzling extermination flame fell from Xavier's hand before transforming into a straight light of fire. Like an arrow, it shot after the demon and tore through the air as it passed. A dark black spatial crack appeared. It then formed into the shape of a massive and ferocious mouth. The mouth grew in size. It opened and closed so that it could swallow an entire human being in one bite. Fear surged through the demon as he watched the extermination flame quietly rush at him. His eyes shrunk in horror. The extermination flame rushed closer and closer to the demon of the Demon Flame Valley. The demon tried to save his own skin with one last desperate attempt. He waved his hands, and a large, icy black cloud formed around him. It was at least 100 feet large. He wrapped himself into this cloud. Suddenly, the hot temperature of the air dropped. Many ice crystals formed from the icy black cloud. No one expected the demon to have the power to turn the temperature so much lower. Within seconds, the inner circle of Nanji Academy was covered by a thin layer of frost. The students shivered. They could even feel their Q energy turning to ice. First Elder Zun turned pale. He turned to the others. "Everyone, bring the students to safety and withdraw." He did not have to say this twice. The elders hurriedly withdrew, bringing the students far away from the battlefield in the inner circle. The doctor's expression changed as the First Elder Zun withdrew.
The Q energy within this black cloud is terrifying, but if even the First Elder is scared, then it must be even worse than I could imagine. I should leave as well.
Not long after the First Elder's cry sounded, the extermination flame hit the black icy cloud, surrounding the demon from the Demon Flame Valley. The fire was merciless. It tore the black cloud apart. A wave of flame spread through the sky. A radius of at least 1,000 feet was engulfed by this wave. The people of the Demon Flame Valley, who could not flee in time, were incinerated to nothingness within not even a second. The black cloud vanished due to the immense heat of Xavier's attack. Many trees that were too close caught fire. Even the forest outside the inner circle was affected by this and turned into a wasteland. The First Elder cried out, "The energy keeps growing. There will be another wave. Everyone, hide, quickly!" Instantly, all the elders and students went into hiding. At the same time, an enormous fireball rose higher into the sky. The destructive energy within it distorted the space itself, causing a black crack. Xavier was shocked to see this. It didn't explode? But the thunder, I thought it exploded. His eyes widened in shock. The fireball grew and grew in size. Xavier tried to gain control over it, but struggled. His entire body trembled. I don't have enough energy to control it. I can't do anything. Shit. What am I supposed to do? Xavier surged more and more Q energy and spiritual energy, but nothing seemed to take control over the growing fireball. It turned into another sun in the sky. He was drenched in cold sweat. He flew into a safe distance. If this fireball explodes, then the inner circle would not exist anymore. I need to do something. Before he could come up with an idea, he saw two figures, dressed in gray, rushing closer.
Watch out! The fireball is about to explode!
Xavier yelled across the wide distance to the two gray-robed figures who had suddenly appeared. They continued to hover beside the fireball, as if unaware of the danger they were in.
It's going to explode! You need to move!
Xavier brushed over his storage ring and pulled out some Q energy recovery pills. He swallowed a bunch of them to recover his energy. The figures came closer. Xavier watched as they turned to him with their experienced and soothing eyes. Suddenly, he felt an overwhelming sense of calm as the two old men smiled at him. Xavier realized that the wild and violent energy he had built up within his body had somehow calmed. Surprise and confusion flashed in his eyes.
What's happening? I think these two elders have suppressed my strength. How did they do this? Who are these two mysterious elders?
Meanwhile, the other experts had noticed the sudden appearance of the two mysterious gray-robed elders. Han Feng and the others were just as startled as Xavier. They are so close to the fireball. They can be incinerated. Are they insane? Who are they? It was First Elder Zun who finally recognized them. His eyes filled with joy. It's them. I can't believe that they are finally willing to intervene. He laughed with relief. First Elder, are they really who I think they are? Asked an inner circle elder who also slowly connected the dots. First Elder Zun smiled widely and nodded his head. They are the guardians of the Nanji Academy. They only extend their help if the Nanji Academy is faced with a hopeless situation. Otherwise, they would never intervene. We are fortunate that they have decided to show up. As the students and elders of Nanji Academy continued to express their excitement, up above, the two mysterious guardians prepared to act. They examined the enormous fireball in front of them. They exchanged looks and silently communicated with each other. Slowly, they raised their shriveled hands and moved them through the air, gathering their energies. A number of intense spatial ripples suddenly burst out and turned the space around them into a countless number of folds. The air took on a twisted appearance, making it hard to see. The two gray-robed guardians focused, and the spatial ripple increased in intensity. Suddenly, a gigantic Q-energy hand appeared. With a downward motion of the hand, two fingers tore through the air, creating a huge spatial crack. Behind this crack was a dark void. A strong and frightening wind suddenly blew in. The wind gently pushed the enormous fireball through the crack. As the last of the fireball was pushed completely into the void, the ferociously hot temperature dropped. The two guardians waved their hands. The spatial crack began to close like a zipper in the sky. Very soon, it completely disappeared, and it looked as if nothing had happened. The two gray-robed guardians looked at each other and sighed in relief. "That was more difficult than I thought it would be," one of them said. "Indeed. Luckily the fireball had created tiny cracks, so it was easier to tear the crack and chase it into the bottomless hole." The other elder added. Xavier had witnessed everything. He thought to himself, "Wow, they tore space by simply raising their hands. What kind of frightening strength do you need to tear space like that? The demon couldn't have managed. Who are these two? They saved the inner circle. I lost control of the extermination flame. This is my fault. I am lucky that these elders arrived." Immediately, First Elder Zun, the doctor, and the others appeared beside Xavier. After ensuring that Xavier wasn't badly hurt, First Elder Zun waved his hand and softly said, "Follow me, but don't say a word." First Elder Zun swiftly rushed to the two gray-robed guardians. Xavier hesitated a little. "Will you come with me?" he asked the doctor. She nodded and followed Xavier. First Elder Zun hovered in front of the two gray-robed elders and bowed deeply in respect. "Old Bai, Old Kaio, thank you both for intervening. If you had not intervened today, the inner circle would no longer exist." One of the gray-robed elders frowned and chastised First Elder Zun in a stern voice. "Well, young man Zun, perhaps you're not as competent as you should be in your job as First Elder. If the inner circle had been destroyed, you would never be able to make amends, not even if you were to die 10 times over." First Elder Zun was smiling bitterly. Xavier could not hold his tongue as he was told to. "I am completely responsible for today's situation. Please blame me, and I will take responsibility. It has nothing to do with First Elder Zun." The two guardians assessed Xavier. Surprise flashed in their eyes. One of them proclaimed, "You. I remember you're the young man who controlled the green heavenly flame." Xavier nodded. "Yes, that was me. I'm surprised that you still remember that." The other guardian laughed and said, "I recall that you were just a she-master when we met you then. You've progressed to this level in just a few years. The Nanji Academy has finally produced an impressive student. If that old headmaster Mang knew about this, he would be very proud. It seems that you currently control more than one heavenly flame. Is this due to a special Q method? How extraordinary. You should be more careful in the future." Xavier nodded in agreement and with respect. "I will be." "And who might this be?" asked one of the guardians. There was a hint of surprise in his voice. His eyes rested on the doctor. "It's a very nice surprise to meet an owner of a woeful poison body after so many years. It is a real pleasure." The other guardian added somewhat regretfully, "Unfortunately, everyone with the woeful poison body has a similar fate." First Elder Zun rolled his eyes and said resentfully, "Now, that's no way to speak to someone, especially after the situation we've just been through. If both of you had appeared earlier, none of this would have happened. You both know the power of the Demon Flame Valley. If Xavier had not stepped forward, I'm not sure what horrible situation we would be in now. I have to say, You've been poor guardians of the Nanji Academy. This is the first time since our headmaster left that you have appeared. I've been left to manage entirely on my own." The two gray-robed elders lowered their eyes, as they both knew what First Elder Zun said was true. They had lived a peaceful life, and not engaged in battles where the Nanji Academy could have used their assistance. During these years without needing to worry about anything, one of them, namely Old Bai, coughed and said, "I know. We had similar experiences years ago. It's not easy to be the first elder. However, is it true that the headmaster has not returned? This is extremely irresponsible. It's been about 10 years since he left. Isn't that right? If I knew that he wouldn't return, I never would have taken on the role of First Elder," groaned First Elder Zun regretfully. He then turned to Xavier and the doctor and formally introduced the two gray-robed elders. "This is Old Bai, and this is the Old Kaio. They were the first elders of the Nanji Academy a very long time ago. They have since retired and are enjoying life." Xavier and the doctor both bowed deeply and greeted the two guardians. The two gray-clothed elders waved their hands. "Please, please. We do not need these formalities. It's a shame we didn't get to meet those other people. They seemed interesting," one of them said, and looked into the distance. Xavier and the others immediately faced the direction where the elders were looking, only to see an empty space. There was not a single figure, or even a slight energy ripple. Han Fang and the demon had escaped into thin air, alongside their minions. "He's gotten away. I cannot believe I have to go tell the students they are still in danger, that monster may come back at any moment." First Elder Zun cursed loudly. "Zun, even after so many years, you are still the same old worrywart. Do not worry. This spatial hiding method is useless against the two of us." Old Kaio smiled and gently waved his sleeves. A ripple spread out. In the blink of an eye, it completely covered the empty sky. The ripple gently wafted over Xavier and his friends like a warm, comforting hug. The ripple was not so gentle to everyone. 50 feet away, space split like a seam. The demon was hit hard by the energy ripple, turning him into a miserable, cowering figure. Xavier's face twisted with rage when he saw the demon. "The demon is here and still alive? How is that possible?" First Elder Zun was shocked too. He wanted to say something, but the Old Kaio already dealt with it. "He survived, though just barely. I would not say he is unscathed. Look at him." Old Kaio waved his hand. The demon's clothes had been burned to tattered rags. His body was covered with 4th-degree burns, as if he had been thrown into a pot of boiling oil. The giant welts wept pus and blood, and with every movement, pain seared across his face. The demon might have survived Xavier's elimination flame, but the price was too great. The demon glared at Xavier viciously. Then his eyes swept over the two gray-clothed elders, and he trembled in terror, though he tried to hide it. "Bai, Kaio? I did not know you two old goats were still alive." Old Bai and Old Kaio gazed with pity at the demon. Old Kaio smiled. "We are more alive than you, by the looks of it." The demon's face twitched. He knew he was not strong enough to beat these two elders. There was still First Elder Zun, and the others watching him maliciously. He needed to escape and try to heal himself before he could hope to deal with them. "We cannot let this old fellow off. A number of students from the Nanji Academy have been killed by the Demon Flame Valley. If he is allowed to live, he will continue to prey on these students in the future." A cold glint flashed in First Elder Zun's eyes. Old Kaio's and Old Bai's eyes narrowed when they heard this, their faces full of rage. "Preying on students is a 7-star warlord. Only a monster without any honor or courage does that," Old Bai observed. Apparently, we have stayed away too long on our retreat. We are close to becoming War Kings, and it seemed worth it to keep training. I see we should have checked back in. It's a good thing this flame's energy was powerful enough to reach us, or we might never have known you were in danger," he added. The demon knew he had to get away quickly. He lifted his fist and smashed it against his own chest. He spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, which spread out and formed a rusty red fog in front of him. The space around the demon's body swiftly became distorted. "He's about to flee! Stop him!" Xavier leapt forwards as the demon's body was completely wrapped by the blood fog. The blood fog blasted apart. The demon simply disappeared into nowhere. The first elder was sent into a panic. "We have to find him. We will not be able to defeat him again if we let him heal and get back to his full strength." "Zun, there is no need to panic. The old fellow will not be able to escape." Old Kaio smiled. "Today, I will finally get to resolve some of the grudges of the past." Old Bai murmured to himself before flashing away with a beam of light. Xavier wiped the cold sweat off his brow. "Is that the speed of an elite war king? Can all of you teleport like that?" "War king? Do you think we are already war kings? You have really overestimated us. We still have a long way to go to become war kings." Old Kaio laughed. "Are you sure? You seem powerful enough to be war kings to me." Xavier laughed. "Old Bai and I are level 9 warlords. We have one more Q-star to go before we are war kings, and the gap between these levels is vast. We may never get there in our lifetimes. But enough of that. Given the current condition of the demon, he will not be able to escape from Old Bai. Moreover, the two of them have some animosity between them from back in the day. You don't need to worry. Unfortunately, the two of us cannot stay long. We need to once again undertake a retreat after everything is settled. We still hold out a shred of hope of being able to reach the War King level. The Nanji Academy will be left to you once again, to protect from the remains of the Demon Flame Valley." Old Kaio looked at First Elder Zun. First Elder Zun nodded and turned to one of the younger elders that approached. "Could you go and take care of the students?" The elder nodded and flew down to gather the hidden students and calm them down. Xavier's gaze swept all around the sky. Han Fang fled. I fear we will one day have to deal with him again. He seems inclined to hold a grudge. It's too bad. I was really hoping he could provide some more information on the Hall of Souls and where Master Lao is imprisoned.
Xavier, there will be opportunities to deal with him in the future. The Hall of Souls can wait. How are your injuries?
The doctor comforted him.
Your Q energy is extremely volatile at the moment, and you are white as a sheet. Clearly, your use of the extermination flame earlier caused quite a backlash. You need to rest and heal.
I'm all right. What about you, though? You took so many terrible hits, and you had to unleash the woeful poison body. What are the consequences of that? Xavier wiped off the remaining blood on the corner of his mouth. The doctor gently parted the snow-white hair in front of her forehead, smiled wordlessly, and shrugged.
The students below are all still standing, and none of us on the battlefield are poisoned to death, so I will count that as a win.
I guess that's a small victory at least. Still, I'm sorry you had to test it. You can rest assured that after we find the last ingredient, you will be able to be free and in control of the woeful poison body once and for all. Xavier promised. The doctor nodded. Suddenly, she seemed to realize something.
Speaking of poison, Xavier, these two elders are extremely powerful. I wonder if they are able to help you remove the demon poison spot from your body.
Xavier's heart immediately leapt. You think these two guardians of the inner circle could be strong enough? I was hoping to find the headmaster somehow, but I guess I should give up on that if he really hasn't been seen for 10 years. If these two elders would be strong enough and willing to help, Maybe they could remove this ticking poison time bomb in my body. First Elder Zun overheard the conversation between Xavier and the doctor and interrupted them. Calm down, Xavier. One enormous impossible task at a time. Please. You need to rest and recover from this battle. Old Kaio, please head down to rest for a while. Old Bai should be back in a while. Take Xavier with you. First Elder Zun smiled. His gaze swept over the sky. The masters from the Demon Flame Valley from earlier fled with Han Fang. I think for the moment, the danger has passed, and we should all regather our strength. Old Kaio nodded and did as he was told. In the meantime, many of the students of the Inner Academy had already been gathered by the elders. They rushed towards Xavier the moment he and the others descended back to the ground. She ran over and hugged him tightly. Are you all right? You're so pale. I'm fine, She. This is old Kaio from the Inner Academy. Fortunately, he intervened and saved us all. Otherwise, I would have ended up destroying the school and possibly ripping a hole in the space-time continuum by accident. Xavier smiled wryly. A hole in the space-time continuum? Well, then thank you for intervening, Elder Kaio. She greeted old Kaio respectfully, while shooting Xavier a look that clearly said, What do you mean? You almost did what exactly? It's my job. Old Kaio smiled. The old Bai and I protect the academy. We were on retreat, so we didn't know what had been happening with the Demon Flame Valley. Luckily, Xavier caused such a ruckus with his flame that it reached us. The first elder landed next to them as well and added, We should make sure that everyone gets inside before discussing everything, before ushering the remaining curious students back into their buildings. Since none of them had ever seen such a powerful battle before, it took quite a while until everyone obeyed and went back to the other students. Naturally, the battle would be the only thing they would talk about for the year to come. The first elder sighed and made his way to the Great Hall. Once everything was dealt with, the Guardian, as well as Xavier, She, and the doctor followed. Once they were seated around a large table in the Great Hall, Elder Zun began telling the old Kaio about the matters that had happened to the Inner Academy in the last few years, including a brief summary of the Fallen Heart Heavenly Flame of the Inner Academy. The Fallen Heart Flame of the Inner Academy landed in Xavier's hands. Old Kaio was stunned. You are really lucky. Headmaster Mang discovered the Fallen Heart Flame and ended up sealing it here. Originally, he had planned to absorb and refine it. However, the Fallen Heart Flame had evolved and formed its own intelligence. It stubbornly resisted refinement and continued to hide within the underground magma. It must have chosen to let you use it. Xavier smiled sheepishly. I know it wasn't supposed to just benefit one person. I'm sorry about it, really. I already agreed to show up and keep the Q training tower fueled to make up for it. Sometimes it happens this way. You are clearly meant to possess it. Sometimes working with these flames is not a matter of forcing one's will. There is no need for you to feel guilty. The Fallen Heart Flame might also have become a danger if it was left to its own devices. It could have erupted and destroyed the entire academy. Back when the headmaster found it, I did not really support sealing it. The more one seals it, the harder it becomes to deal with in the future. Old Kaio patted Xavier's shoulder. Xavier nodded, though he silently disagreed. I almost destroyed the school with it, though, by accident. I'm not sure I was meant to have it. Suddenly, the old Bai appeared in the Great Hall with a flash of light. With a flip of his hand, he tossed the corpse of the old demon to the ground in front of him. It is done. Everyone began murmuring amongst themselves, relieved that their enemy was gone and they were no longer in danger. Old Kaio looked at the scarred corpse with satisfaction. I see you were able to settle your old score. Congrats. Old Bai nodded with a grin. He silently sat down in a chair next to old Kaio and he closed his eyes. "It takes something out of you, though. I think I may need a nap." He laughed. "Now that the danger has been taken care of, the old Bai and I need to continue our retreat. We do not know when we will be back. The inner academy shall be left to you during this period of time." Old Kaio turned to First Elder Zun. First Elder Zun nodded. "Elders, I'm sorry to ask you for another favor, but we need your help with one more thing." "Well, Xavier is the one that needs the help, really. You see, Xavier has unluckily been poisoned, and he needs an elite war king to help him completely expel it. Is that something you can do? He will die in 2 years if he is not able to expel the poison in some way. I know that neither of you are technically war kings yet, but each of you is very close to that level. Perhaps either of you could come up with something to help him." First Elder Zun gestured at Xavier solemnly. Old Kaio and Old Bai fell quiet. Their gazes swept over Xavier. "This poison is so powerful, it actually requires an elite war king to eliminate it. This is the first time that the two of us have seen such a potent poison in so many years. Xavier, come over and let me take a look." "Xavier, you've been poisoned? Why didn't you tell me?" Beside Xavier, Shi's face filled with shock and fear. "I didn't want to trouble you. It's fine for now. I'm looking for ways to deal with it." Xavier helplessly shook his head. "You didn't want to trouble me. Is there anything else going on that I should know about?" She leaned towards Xavier. The doctor snorted bitterly. She looked at her, then back at Xavier. "I'll catch you up on all the mayhem later, Shi. It's been a chaotic year." Xavier stood and walked over to the old Kaio. He swiftly pulled apart his robe to reveal the strange black poison spot on his chest. "This seal stops it from working for 2 years, hopefully giving me time to expel the poison. The spot is called a demon poison spot, and it's imbued with all the power of an elite warlord. I need a war king to undo it," he explained. "You ticked off an elite warlord enough that he exhausted all of his Q energy to poison you. That is very impressive," Old Kaio teased to lighten the mood. His eyes studied the black spot. A moment later, he frowned, and an additional solemnness appeared in his eyes. He exchanged glances with Old Bai, after which, the two of them extended their fingers together. An extremely powerful Q energy surged out. The Q energy churned and solidified into 2 half-inch long energy crystals. Everyone gasped when they saw that the two of them were actually able to solidify Q energy. Legend had it that only an elite war king could solidify their Q energy. With a gentle flick of their fingers, the Q energy crystals escaped Old Kaio and Old Bai's fingers and flew to the black spot on Xavier's chest. When they were an inch away, they suddenly burst apart, transforming into a cloud of tiny crystals that landed on the black spot. Xavier's entire body trembled ferociously, his face distorted with pain. "It burns like lava," he hissed through clenched teeth. The black poison spot suddenly began to writhe like a living thing. Slowly, a strange black fog seeped out of the poison spot, curling out of Xavier's chest and scattering. "Be careful, it's poisonous," the doctor snapped, leaping to her feet and gesturing for all the others who had gathered around to watch to step back. The doctor held out her hand, and gray Q energy surged out, wrapping around the black fog before carefully withdrawing back into her body. "My body is basically a poison refining cauldron. Even this poison doesn't pose any threat to me," the doctor explained to the old Kaio and the old Bai. "Is it cured?" First Elder Zun held his breath as he asked. Everyone that was gathered around the table looked at the old Bai and the old Kaio. They knew if these two elders could not help Xavier, then he was running out of options.